Sword of Coming Chapter 1149. The Taoist temple's newly received mountain guard was enshrined. Guha the guard was keenly aware of a ripple of energy outside the temple. As part of his duty, he immediately strode out of the wing to meet the man for a while. I saw this new gatekeeper of the Taoist temple, wearing a purple gold crown, a long light crimson silk coat, a treasure armor underneath, a sapphire belt around his waist and a powerful black mace in his hand. He standing on the steps, his eyes flashing, said sternly, "Who is coming? Tell me your name. Stop quickly. If you dare to be good at this view, be careful of your head rolling to the ground." The uninvited guest was an elegant old man in a long blue gown. His moral power could not be seen for the time being. He did not look like a big shot, but more like an old scholar in a study and a guest of a state or county magistrate. The man heard Gu He's threat and said nothing. He just glanced at the unfamiliar face of the Taoist temple. However, Gu He just thought that the other party was shocked by him, and he felt a little complacent in his heart. He took a few glances at this man in green shirt who was trying to calm himself down. He had thin arms and thin legs, so don't be frightened by the Taoist master. Wang Yuanlu, who is as thin as a bamboo pole as the first disciple of the temple master, has previously reminded Gu He about hospitality. Those who come here are guests. Those who can ride the wind all the way here to become familiar faces, or they come because of their reputation. Either we are old acquaintances with master, so there is no need to hurt the harmony. If you can help report it, and if it is the worst, record it in the book and then summarize it later. Let master take a look at it and have an idea. However, Gu He always felt that such a soft style was not a good taste. The formation was too small and the arrangement was not enough. It is not worthy of the name of Guandao Temple and the name of Bixiao Cave Master. Together with fellow Taoist Jinjing, I came up with such a more shocking opening statement. This is called a head start. Taoist officials all over the world know that the threshold of this place is high. Although Gu He likes to show off, he has no intention of using the situation to bully others. That would be too cheap. Seeing that the uninvited visitor showed no sign of contradicting or offending him, he spoke a little more tactfully. "Young man, don't pretend to be deaf and dumb. The rules of my dojo are very strict. People who are idle should not regard this place as a tourist place. You, the young man, have accidentally offended my temple master Xianxia, and you can't bear to walk around. I have said harsh words and I have said good things. If this guy doesn't understand the importance and still doesn't appreciate it, it would be more lively if there is an extra handyman in the Taoist temple and he and fellow Taoist Jinjing become brothers." The young Taoist boy heard the sound and rushed over. When he saw the expressionless guest in green clothes outside the door, he felt as if he had seen a ghost. Sun Lanling was so polite, he bowed respectfully and called, "Senior Qingzhu. Don't forget to wish you longevity without borders." Qin Qinglu smiled playfully and just nodded in greeting. Gu He hurriedly asked in his heart, "Fellow Taoist Jinjing, is it possible that this visitor is an extremely capable person?" Before Gu He could make up his mind, the young Taoist boy had no time to explain. The old temple master holding the scorpion tail in his hand had already walked out of the hall and came straight to this side. When he arrived at the entrance of the Taoist temple, he walked down the steps and passed by Gu He in the process. "When passing by, I would like to remind you, you owe Pin Dao a higher level." Gu He's body became stiff as if struck by lightning. "The man named Lu previously lied to me and said that you, master, had already reached the 15th realm. With my innocent heart, I believed it to be true. How could I not have reached the realm?" After walking down the steps to greet the guests and walking up to Qin Qinglu, the old temple master asked with a smile, "Friend Qingzhu, have you reported this trip to the Zhongtu Confucian temple? With Qin Qinglia's swordsmanship, it is easy to cross the world, especially when it involves the long river of time, which is Qin Qinglia's specialty. Therefore, this question has the meaning of deliberately exposing the shortcomings." Qin Qinglu smiled and said, "Of course it needs to be reported. Nowadays, the rules of the Confucian temple are as important as those of Bixiao Taoist temple. I'm no longer a fool. My ambitions are declining year by year and my hair is getting grayer. Now that I am getting older, I have to obey. Not to mention that after 3,000 years of practicing Taoism, my realm has stagnated and my Taoist power has not improved at all. I occasionally go out to visit old friends. I have no shame in showing off to an employer like the Confucian temple. I can only take a leave of absence for a few days." Gu Hideo's heart was shocked. "Good fellow, are you suing him face to face?" Why now the monks on Howren's side with Qin Pingon in front of them and the Qing master in front of them behind them, are they all so vindictive and petty? The old temple master said with emotion. The former Qingzhou Taoist friend was so high-spirited and high-spirited. There were no barriers or restrictions in his eyes. Qin Qinglu didn't take it seriously. A good man doesn't mention his former bravery. The old temple leader asked, since you have been to the wilderness, have you met the Taoist monks of the temple? Qin Qinglu nodded and said, the relationship is normal, the conversation is not speculative, just a few small talk. The old temple master smiled and said, the temple of Kai Tian is made of ground, and the Qing master of dragon slaying is restrained. What kind of friends does this poor Taoist have? Qin Qinglu seemed to say casually, from hatred to pity, from love to hatred, this cause and effect is bound, the world's road has become a dead end, and I need to borrow stones from other mountains to attack jade. Luqian has made many mistakes for me. When I was young, I saw the world as a straight line, straightforward, simple and clear. When you are in your prime, the world you live in becomes a mess, entangled with love and hate, and everything becomes a mess. He heard it like falling into the clouds, but Sun Lanling knew how powerful it was. Qin Qingli's understatement of dozens of words revealed the antecedents, processes and consequences of the dragon-slaying battle 3,000 years ago. The old temple leader took the lead to move, and took Qin Qinglu with him to shrink down at will, as if he was trying to choose a place that was the best place to enjoy the view of the human world, and said slowly, those who have achieved enlightenment on their own have always been rare, and those who rely on external forces to escape catastrophe have been common. On the same line, Qin Qinglu took the cause and effect, and Qi Jingchun provoked the disaster. It started well and ended well. It's no wonder that you met and fell in love. It turns out that you are heartfelt comrades. Qin Qinglu said, it's a pity that Mr. Qi's junior brother didn't listen to the advice and refused to stay out of the matter. He always wanted to face the difficulties so that he could live up to others' expectations. The old temple master smiled and said, young people are like this, they should set their first-class aspirations. Qin Qinglu said, when there are more young people, the world becomes older. The old temple leader asked, there are some things that cannot be avoided. Have you thought about how to solve them? Qin Qinglu stretched out his thumb and rubbed the center of his brow. Senior Sister Xia and that evil disciple, each has a more violent temper than the other. How can I control them? On the side of Bixiao Cave Master, who knew each other well, Qin Qinglu was too lazy to hide it, and there was no family scandal that should not be made public. Think back to those days. The mighty ancient and modern, the green shirt is the same. The wind drives the sea and the waves stand tall. The immortal king throws his sword and hits the water thousands of miles away. When a common man is angry, all rivers boil. At the entrance of the Taoist temple, Wang Yunlu squatted on the steps with his hands in his sleeves and asked softly, Brother Jingjing, who can let our master be so kind and take the initiative to go out to greet you? The Xiaohuo boy, who was fearless, was afraid of the senior Qingzhou. He could only say vaguely, this person is extremely skilled in swordsmanship and has a strong murderous intention, but he likes to think of himself as a scholar. The dojo is still in Tongya. When I was in Taiwan, I would change my appearance and identity every once in a while and take the initiative to visit our Taoist temple. Master was particularly fond of this fellow Taoist, and we talked a lot with him every time we got together. He said cautiously, fellow Taoist Jingjing, did I kick the iron plate? Sun Lanling glared and said, you blame me? Master Dao told you not to fall short of the authority of my master. He didn't mean that you have no eyesight at all and dare to yell at anyone you see. He complained that no one could blame Taoist Jingjing. He pretended to be heroic and said with a carefree smile, this account will only be recorded on Taoist master's head. Wang Yuanlu nodded. He was a brave and righteous man. If there was a chance in the future, he could join Qigu and the three of them would travel to various states together. In the past, he was the one who took the blame for Qigu and suffered a lot. If he could find someone who was willing to take the blame, why not do it? After finally choosing a perfect location, the old viewer looked at the world, sighing, and asked, then we who have nothing to do, are allowed to have the courage to condescend and bid farewell to a leisurely journey on earth? This was the reason why I came here. Qin Qinglu nodded and said, I'm very lucky. There once was a young man in white clothes pointing to the sky and spoke some sincere words. There are always one or two cranes neighing higher in the sky, far away from the ground, but it makes people feel sad. I've seen it and heard it and it's hard to forget. Difei Mountain in Yuzhou is not only the ancestral home of the Fulu sect, but also the Taoist priests' attainments in alchemy, which are unparalleled in the world and are worthy of their reputation. The tall young Taoist priest felt a little moved in his heart, so he put down a Taoist book in his hand, walked out of the building and looked at the sea of clouds in the mountains. Occasionally, groups of cranes glided out of the white clouds and flew into the blue sky. Difei Mountain, the first of the 72 blessed places in the world, also has a sixth cave. This mountain is like a Taoist who has perfected his merits and conforms to the way of heaven, and can breathe and refine qi on his own. The spiritual energy of a state gathers here on its own initiative, just like ministers coming here to pay homage to the 9-5 Lord. The spiritual energy of mountains and rivers gathers into seas of clouds, gathering and dispersing regularly, and is tempered into streams of majestic Taoism. Taoist priests can practice here and feel like God is helping them all the time, so they can naturally get twice the result with half the effort. What a rare paradise in the world, a well-deserved Taoist holy land. Even someone as conceited as him would feel that occupying this place would be unworthy of his position. An old Taoist priest came here and saw the young palace master who had no idea. He stopped and bowed his head and said with an apologetic expression, "Tue Palace Xianxia, pay your respects to the palace master. There is a distinguished guest in the mountain and it is Hongnong." A group of young people from the Yang family led by names asked to see the palace master. They said that they had something to discuss and it was very important. Xian had neglected his duty and caused the palace master to be distracted. Mao Jue ignored Xian's polite words, frowned slightly and laughed at himself. How can a bunch of young boys talk about serious business with a palace master in name only, about what Bai Yujing will do without Daozu? How to get Xian to answer this? Mao Jue said, "Xian, tell them directly that I won't see any visitors in the near future. If they are sensible, they can stay in the mountain and enjoy the scenery. If there is any further entanglement, they will go down the mountain directly." Xian stopped talking. The territory of Yuzhou Huayong Palace, Shoshan Pavilion, and the Yang family of Hongnong are three pillars. Their relationship has always been good. They have not concluded a paper alliance, but they are better than allies. In particular, Gao Gu's most valued disciple was from the Yang family of Hongnong. With this layer of incense and love, the harmony between the mountains and the surnames was even more harmonious. Taoist priests had their first choice when joining the world and visiting immortals in the mountains. Xian said, "There are strange people and strangers hidden in the team going up the mountain." Mao Jue said calmly, "Troublesome? Then let Gao Fu hold the talisman sword and invite the Tai Mountain God." Tai Mountain God is the landlord of Difei Mountain and the protector of Huayong Palace. When Xian heard this, he looked troubled. Even when the master was alive, the mountain with a high status would not disturb him as long as he could. He was always regarded as a fellow Taoist and had no precedent of dispatching or driving him. Although junior brother Gao is now the legitimate lord of the mountain, it is really difficult for Xian to ask Gao Fu to hold a token to ask the gods to come out of the mountain, and he will never be able to do so. Mao Jue smiled sarcastically and asked, "If Gao Fu is in trouble, then it's up to you to do it yourself. Since when does the master of Huayong Palace have to look at other people's faces whether he sees guests or not?" This tall young Taoist priest, as an outsider, had just settled in the Huayong Palace genealogy, and inexplicably transformed into the contemporary owner of the Huayong Palace. But the founder, Gao Gu, had been in power for 3,000 years and had such great authority that no one dared to question Gao Gu's decision. The previous meeting in the Patriarch Hall, which lacked the Patriarch and added a strange young man, was without any disturbance. The entire Difei Mountain also had no objections to Gao Fu taking over as the mountain leader. There is no quarrel or fuss, the clouds are calm and the wind is gentle, they practice their own practices and they are still pure. Xian nodded and said, "I will go and entertain the guests myself." Mao Jue said, "If Gao Gu dies, outsiders will not take the decree of the master of Huayong Palace seriously." Xian was shocked when he heard this and said in a deep voice, "That's right." Mao Jue sighed in his heart. Xian respected his master the most, so he used this to stimulate the general and hit his weak spot. Even if the realm is as high as Xian, it is still difficult to completely cut off the world of mortals. People who practice Taoism have worries in their hearts like the sun and the moon hanging in the sky. Outside the mountain, there is the world of mortals, and in the mountain there is the entanglement of cause and effect of the Taoist people in the mountain. Before Gao Gu asked by Yujing, he left 2 palace master tokens and a secret letter, and asked Xian, a direct disciple of Zhuwei Palace, the abbot's affairs, to be responsible for announcing the contents of the secret letter and giving it to him. The talisman sword symbolizing the legal tradition of Daifishan Mountain was handed over to the new mountain owner Gao Fu, and at the same time, a robe representing the legal system of Huayang Palace was passed on to the palace owner Mao Jue. Gao Fu, who succeeded the mountain lord and commanded dozens of large and small channels in the entire Difei Mountain, has just entered the Jade Pu realm. The so-called talent does not mean that Gao Fu is too old or that his realm is high or low. But as the mountain master of Difei Mountain, he is only in the Jade Pu realm, which is a bit unsatisfactory. Fortunately, Mao Jue, who took over the Huayang Palace, was an ascendant with profound Tao power. This matter also takes a lot of thinking. Those Taoist priests who have been established in Difei Mountain for many years but are still independent from Huayang Palace can't figure out why Grandmaster Gao's arrangement has not been reversed. The mountain master and the palace master identity swap. It should be said that Xian, the heavenly lord of Zhuwei Palace, is not only the direct disciple of Gao Gu, but also the person in charge of all external affairs of Difei Mountain. He is highly respected and has always served the public. Nowadays, many Taoist officials from various sects in the mountains who are familiar with Zhuwei Palace want to fight for Xian in private. Why isn't this old heavenly king shouldering the unification of Fatong Taoism? Mao Jue didn't even know what Gao Gu was thinking when he, a newcomer who had just arrived from outside, became the master of Huayang Palace. Was he really not afraid that he would mess up and lose his family fortune overnight? The problem is that Mao Jue, as the White Bone Master, has no hatred or resentment towards the White Jade capital. He is just one of Lu Chen's friends. How could he take the initiative to find trouble for Bai Yujing before it was too late to avoid the real Master Lu Chen a few years ago? Or maybe Gao Gu was unexpected and chose to entrust him to him. This was some kind of statement and message to Dao ancestor in this Qingming world? Precisely because Zuxiguan Taoist priest Mao Zue is involved with Lu Chen and Nanhua City, he is the best candidate? Will this understanding of Gao Gu's intention misinterpret the profound meaning? Maybe this is the problem Gao Gu deliberately left for Mao Zhu? Xian had made up his mind and had no worries anymore. He took this opportunity to talk to the new palace master about some important matters concisely and to the point, hoping that Mao Jue would make a decision. Even if Mao Jue heard it, even if he turned a blind eye or ignored it, it was still a decision. Xian asked, Nanqiang's retreat is very likely to be successful. Does the palace owner want to meet her guardian of the mountain pavilion? Huayang Palace also has a line of sword immortals, which has been passed down continuously, but compared to the line of sword immortals in Xuandu Temple, it is slightly dim and has not been able to carry forward. On the south wall of the female crown, the abbot Demugwan, the bottleneck sword repairer in the Yupu realm, is in retreat. The protector of this female sword fairy is not a certain patriarch of Huayang Palace, but a Shoshan pavilion from another sect in the same state. Mao Jue shook his head and said, No. This kind of personal friendship on the mountain just grows on its own. Xian nodded in agreement without any delay and changed the topic. Recently, on the border between the two states, soldiers from several countries and other states have been quarreling with each other in an attempt to start a war. How should the disciples of Huayang Palace who have been stationed there all year round make a decision? Follow the story and act as usual, or? Mao Jue said, directly give a secret decree to all registered Taoist officials who hold important positions in the temples in the major dynasties. Without the clear will of the Zhuxiang, no one is allowed to use troops. Xian explained in a low voice, Palace Master, I guess there may not be one or two forces among them. They want to add fuel to the flames and help Huayang Palace, so that our descendants can become famous. Therefore their move is equivalent to submit a petition to us. Mao Jue said, I know, but there is no need to appreciate it. How the Taoist priests of Huayang Palace should practice and when they should enter the world are not things they can guess casually. Xian stopped talking. Mao Jue said, only names and tools, don't fake people. The first one to receive the order is your Tsuiwei Palace. Xian smiled bitterly, took 3 steps back and said, Xian will obey the law. After straightening up and raising his head, Xian looked at the tall young man with an indifferent expression. Mao Jue understood the idea and said with an expression as usual, "If you want to do something in your position now that you are the master of the palace, no matter how great a great Gaogu is, it still cannot affect the survival of the entire Huayang Palace. But this does not mean that Gaogu, when Gus's body and soul are gone, Huayang Palace and Daifishan Mountain will be removed with a single stroke. When I am free to practice Taoism, I am most afraid of trouble, but when serious things come, I am not afraid of trouble. You know, the world is going to be in chaos. How should Huayang Palace deal with it? When the time is right, I will give you the justice you deserve, and Bai Yujing will give it to you. A noble person must be lonely. Gaogu Gaogu, this name is really appropriate. He has a high Taoism and a noble character. He does not rely on external forces on the way to practice, and he also insists on pursuing his own way in doing things. After taking this reassurance, Yin Xian burst into tears and bowed his head, but was speechless to show his gratitude. Mao Jue reminded, "Remember to restrain the Taoist officials of all channels in Daifishan Mountain and don't bother to explore the roots of Zhushuguan. As for the fact that he is Master Baigu, only a few people in Difei Mountain, including Yin Xian and Gao Fu, know the truth for the time being." Of course, Mao Jue didn't think there was anything shady about his background, but he was afraid that someone with ulterior motives would take the opportunity to make a fuss about it. In troubled times, one has to dare to be the first, go on a rampage or bet big and rely on one's life to find a way to the Yangguan Road. Or simply don't gamble on the illusory destiny and wait patiently for a certain point. Yin Xian was horrified in his heart. How could a Taoist official in the mountain behave like this? He quickly went to the police again and apologized. "Don't worry, Palace Master, I will investigate this matter strictly and there will be no ambiguity." Mao Jue said, "After all, this matter involves the housework of Daifishan Mountain. Once it is verified, you can decide whether to be dealt with leniently or severely. I only want to see whether the result is clear or not. After this beating, if someone does it again, I'm going to ask you directly, don't blame me for being the master of the palace and giving orders to the entire Tsuiwei Palace." Yin Xian smiled casually and said, "Palace Master, you can rest assured. The laws and regulations of the Patriarch Hall of our Huayang Palace have always been greater than some of the conventions of Difei Mountain. If you don't use them normally, it's a matter of affection and kindness. If you use them, it's a rule." "Will." Mao Zhu nodded. "Don't underestimate the ability and majesty of a Taoist heavenly king just because Yin Xian is respectful to Mao Jue. If he comes down from the mountain, he will walk the world as a teacher. It has always been extremely difficult for Bai Yujing to intervene in specific affairs in Yuzhou. As the second in command of Difei Mountain, Yin Xian's actions outside the mountain are to act on behalf of heaven." Mao Jue said, "It doesn't hurt to stand and talk. You are burdened with daily responsibilities all year round and cannot shirk your duties. It is difficult for you to concentrate on polishing your body. But you still need to take some time off from your busy schedule. We need to hurry up when it comes to attaining enlightenment and ascension." Yin Xian smiled and nodded. "The Palace Master has a heart, so it should be so." Mao Jue asked abruptly, "Do you still remember the way you went up the mountain for the first time?" Yin Xian recalled the past and murmured, "The memory is still fresh." Being able to become the Master's direct descendant has always been Yin Xian's greatest pride in his life. Small cultivation is in the mountains while major cultivation is in the world. The ashram in the mountains makes you feel at ease, while the world of mortals allows you to see your heart. You can only see thousands of minds by practicing in the world, but it is difficult to calm your mind. You can only see one mind by practicing in the mountains, and you cannot understand the heavenly mind. Both are indispensable. Yin Xian, you were taken up the mountain to practice by Gaogu when you were young, but you didn't know that your way is at the foot of the mountain. At that time, Gaogu intentionally or unintentionally asked you to accompany him on the way down the mountain. The master led him to practice on his own. After that, it was all up to the disciple to realize it. It's a pity that you only cared about sadness and failed to appreciate Gao Gu's kindness. Be careful. Since you admire Master Yashan Lin, why not go to him for a drink and take a look at the customs of the Qijing dynasty along the way? If you feel that the Taoism in some parts of Yaoqing is open to question, go to the Qingshan dynasty to discuss Taoism. Why bother to divide it? Whether you want to win or lose, you can experience the colorful clothes and angry horses of the Wuling young people, and see with your own eyes the academic pursuits of Taoist officials from Hansu. I really want to see the most proud man in the world, so I went to Qizhou. Go to Xuandu to knock on doors, say a word of poetry in person, walk in the countryside and ask for a bowl of water from the local people, and listen to the trackers chant. During this period, whether you change your identity or appearance, just be free. And do whatever you want. If the Qingming world lacks Taoist ancestors, the cycle of Tao will continue like this. If Huayang Palace lacks Yin Xian to preside over affairs, it will definitely not work. I don't think so. Yin Xian stayed for a moment and suddenly said, be taught. Harry Cohn has other ideas. At the Zhuolu site of the ancient battlefield, there was a long-standing debt and a long-standing relationship that had to be entrusted to Mao Zhui. When he was free, he went to settle the knot with a female crown who had changed her appearance and returned to her old place. Mao Zhui knew very well that the reason why Zhuolu fell into ruins was due to Gao Gu's mountaintop battle with a female crown. As for how to resolve the grievances, Mao Zhui didn't need to worry about it. Gao Gu left a secret letter and Mao Zhui only had to pass it on to her. Mao Zhui suddenly explained, I didn't go out this time just to take a look at the Hongnong Yang family's children. You are not yet enlightened enough to notice this. In the previous bright moon, Lu Chen didn't know why, but it showed an unprecedented huge Dharma form, making the entire Qingming world as small as a country drying barn. The Taoist priest looked down at the earth as if he was looking for something. Wearing a lotus crown on the head, it contains the majestic Taoist meaning flowing down the world like a waterfall, scattering billions of golden lights like a net across the 14 states. The key is that a time-honored immortal like Yin Xian, who has profound Taoist power and almost complete merits and virtues, is completely unaware of it. Yin Xian asked doubtfully, can I ask about this? Mao Zhui hesitated for a moment, then revealed the secret in his heart. Lu Chen's realm has reached a new level. Yin Xian was speechless, his Taoist heart was shaken, his face was full of astonishment, he was shocked beyond measure. Master Lu has already reached the perfection of the 14th realm, how can he go further? I heard that in the newly built sect at Leap Moon Peak, the sect advocated that Feng Hai and his party had just left Qingming world and traveled to the wild wilderness. Wu Fu followed them hard and left. Could it be that Headmaster Lu took this opportunity? As for the hard work at Leap Moon Peak, even the monks at the top of the mountain only know the inside story. Normal people in the Ascension realm would not be able to learn about this matter. The reason why Yin Xian knows more is thanks to his master. Mao Zhui instantly guessed Yin Xian's thoughts, shook his head and said, then you underestimated Lu Chen's ways. The graceful lone crane chirps in the blue sky. How lonely. During the busy farming season, the village school is on holiday. The children are very happy that they don't have to go to school for several days, but they are a little depressed because they have to do this and that at home. Master Jiang is not at the school, and Ningji and his senior brother Zhou Xian have been helping the Mengtong families recently, so it is always okay to have a meal or two. After a busy day, the brothers were walking among the fields. They planned to open a small stove today, cut a piece of bacon, chop it, cook dried bamboo shoots and stir-fry a few plates of seasonal wild vegetables. I saw yellow birds flying in the fields, sometimes rising and falling, gathering and scattering. Ningji remembered a poem for no reason. The words were simple and beautifully written, like a catchy nursery rhyme. Draw your sword and draw a net and the oriole will fly. Flying across the sky, come and thank the young man. Zhou Xian and Ningji stopped almost at the same time. I saw two people standing side by the river from a distance, as if they were waiting for something to happen. Judging from his demeanor, he is definitely an expert in Taoism who came from the Immortal Cave. Zhao gathered their voices under the tree and whispered, Ningji, something is wrong. It is difficult to distinguish between friends and foes. I have informed Wei Shenjun from my heart. Before Wei Shenjun arrives, if there is a dispute later, I will deliberately speak softly and beg for mercy. It seems that you are using the name of Master to scare people. At this moment, you will not hesitate to sacrifice the 3 mountain talismans and return to Luoluo Mountain first. Ningji remained silent. Zhao Xian said, listen to senior brother. Ningji nodded. Under the Zhao tree, Ningji. After the man in white robe directly called out their names, he smiled and said, Weibo won't come, so don't waste the 3 mountain talisman. There's no need to be nervous, it's useless to be nervous. Ningji, learn more from your senior brother. When facing the enemy, you need to be murderous and be able to hide your murderous intent. The man introduced, my name is Jing Juzhong and I come from Baidi City. The person next to me, temporarily named Lu Shi, was born from the manifestation of the great Tao of the world. In the historical allusions compiled by Master Lu, he and the Holy Master the one who's not easy to deal with. After looking at the child intently for a few times, Lu Shi nodded and it turned out to be this person. Zhou Xian felt a little relieved, while Ning Ji felt relieved and had a complicated look on his face. Jing Juzhong explained, Lu Shi mentioned this place in words earlier and he just stopped by to see you. Lu Shi has something to say and I have something to do. Lu Shi smiled and said, I believe that with Mr. Jing's mind, there is no need to deceive you, right? Jing Juzhong smiled and said, it's not always the case if something really happens. Lu Shi said, after you have listened to what I said today, you can relay it to Qin Pingan. Zhao Xuxiao looked solemn and said, Mr. Lu, please speak. Lu Shi said slowly, Howren and I, as well as several so-called Taoist friends, all have a good impression of Qin Pingan. Just talking about this hurdle, it will be difficult for Mr. Jing to pass. This has little to do with the level of realm. There is no love or hate for no reason in the world. First there was Shujian Lake and then your husband's attitude towards Feng Yuanshao and student Ning Ji from Colorful World gradually gave me confidence. The most important thing is that your husband is still very young. On the other hand, Mr. Zheng and Palace Master Wu, to put it nicely, their Taoist hearts are as solid as a rock. To put it harshly, they each have their own paths to follow. As the saying goes, the ship will turn around in disaster. Ning Ji, we can see infinite possibilities in your husband, and there is a path that can be continuously corrected and gradually improved. They say that he likes to deny himself and his self-awareness is too thin, but in my opinion that's a huge advantage. During the discussion at the Chinese Confucian temple, the two worlds were facing each other. As the first person to talk about starting a fight, Qin Pingan was slow to go to the wild battlefield to make contributions. It was inevitable that his merits and deeds would be compromised. That is to say, the people in charge of the Confucian temple now are the old scholars who have restored their divine status. In addition, in the Tianwai battle led by Li Xing, Mr. Sanshan Jiuho and Jing Juzhong all appeared. Qin Pingan contributed a lot, even if the Confucian temple deliberately downplayed it. Howren Shanding was still well aware of this matter and recognized that the young hermit official was not someone who could rest on his laurels. Otherwise, the 6 Howren continents besides Aquarius continent and Beiju Lu continent will only be criticized more. What's more, the establishment of a sect in Tongyi's Hao and the construction of a large tunnel are indeed very big things. Before the Holy Master left the Taoism, he also came to Tongyi's Hao, accompanied by Lu Yen, to witness Qin Pingan's invitation to many other continents. The incense paid tribute to the gods of mountains and rivers is willing to scatter all the merits, just like lighting hundreds of millions of lights in the mountains and rivers of a continent at night. Of course Lu Shi would not turn a blind eye. This is one of the intentions of the Holy Master. It was as if he was having a distant conversation with Lu Shi, neighbor and fellow Taoist. Don't be discouraged, just take another look. He was the last hidden official and he was the abbot who fought on the Great Wall of Sorchi. He is the ancestral palace of the Chinese military strategists, and those martial temples that honor famous generals all have a good impression of Qin Pingan. Especially those dealing with the cross-continental ferry stewards are more favorable in the eyes of many caring people. He is both a pure martial artist and a swordsman. He is not only a member of the Confucian tradition of the literary sage, but also the founder of the sect in the mountains. Ning Yao and Fei Ran are recognized by their respective avenues and are the #1 people in the world in both name and reality. As the co-owners of the world, their status is the biggest talisman in the world. To be hostile to it is to contend with a great avenue of heaven and earth. Whether it's me, the wild dial, or the colorful Yuanshao, our Taoist heart is the heavenly heart. By extension, Mr. Jing originally had an unrealistic idea. Since I didn't dare to agree, I won't mention it today. The accomplished Taoist cultivators on the top of the mountain will have a feeling that the Tao is not a dead thing, it has its own likes and dislikes. As the old saying goes, the soil and water nourish the people. The water and soil in different places have their own properties, and the 5 mountains have different soil properties. For example, the 3 rivers that converge in Hongzhou town have completely different water properties. Lu Fang was also afraid that Jiangxi would regroup and lead his troops to do it all over again, which would cause the earth to collapse, smoke to be everywhere, all things in the world to wither, and all life to be in ruins. Jiangxi, the first ancestor of the military strategist, or Zhou Xian, a former literary master, must use their own avenues to exchange for eternal peace with the temporary mountains and rivers shattered like floating catkins, using meticulous methods and ruthless means to pursue once and for all. However, as manifestations of the great avenues of heaven and earth, in the eyes of existences like Zhou Xian and others, a great account book is not calculated in this way. They must be responsible for all living beings now. Lu Feng, who once competed with the most holy master in Xianxia, worked hard as a martial artist at Leap Moon Peak, and became a Taoist couple with Fei Ran not long ago. Feng Yuanshao, who is still a little girl in the colorful world, is a Buddhist in the West, a literary monk who travels through mountains and rivers carrying a Buddhist altar. Cultivating the Taoism is even more about materials, not to mention the use of troops. The soldiers and horses go ahead with food and fodder before they are used. The preparation of soldiers' pay and food, and the deployment of manpower, material and financial resources are all drawn from heaven and earth. Since ancient times, sacrifice requires sacrifices to reward gods. It's like two people. One said, you have to lend me a copper coin and you can earn a few taels of silver tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, but the other only cares about the money in your pocket today. How to discuss business. How to reach agreement. Therefore, this almost irreconcilable fundamental difference is another kind of dispute between the two. If Xianxia comes out this time and can find them and persuade them with some kind of Tao, instead of blindly suppressing them with Taoism and force, he will have a certain chance of gaining an upper hand. It's not that there's nothing to talk about. The reason is almost, not absolutely. For Lu Xi and the others, they had an innate aversion to the monks who practiced and sought immortality. The great monks were like abscesses that could not be cut away. The Immortal Mansion sect and the majestic cities and towns of that dynasty formed a wall of scabies on the earth. Therefore, fighting together is a kind of pinch of the great road to the human world. The common people and the qi refiners regard the ancient battlefield sites as a daunting road, but for Lu Feng and others they are just scars. Zhou Chu's biggest disadvantage in choosing Manhuang is that he is an outsider after all, not of my race, and his mentality must be different. That's why Daoist keeps trying to escape. Even if Zhou Mi offers a new and feasible path, which can even help her eat Howren's comrades, Daoist still refuses to cooperate with Zhou Mi. The Tao does not agree with her. It's the same reason that Lu Yefeng worked so hard to reject Yashanlin Jiangxian in his heart. Unknowingly, invisibly, Lu Xi and Zhao Xu were talking about each other. Ningji walked with Xing Juzhong. Ningji asked curiously, "What big thing is Mr. Xing busy with?" Xing Juzhong said, "I encountered two strong opponents on the road. Since neither of them wanted to give way, I had to fight with them." Ningji asked, "Can Mr. Xing win?" Xing Juzhong smiled and said, "I don't dare to say how it will be." When Ningji heard this polite statement, he felt that Mr. Xing would definitely win. Lu Qi looked around, sighed and bowed his head. Xing Juzhong looked into the distance and asked, "Ningji, I heard that Master Lu is your little master?" Ningji blushed and said, "Master Lu is joking with me." Xing Juzhong remained silent. In the field there seemed to be a bird circling low. Between the sky and the earth, the oriole suddenly fluttered its wings and flew high into the sky. "I don't know if it will be free or fall into a trap." Ningji raised his head and looked up. The young man was sad to see the bird, and the young man was happy when the bird flew away. He felt a little disappointed when he saw no trace of the oriole. He was stunned for a while and didn't know what to say. Sword of Coming Chapter 1150. The top of the main peak of Difei Mountain is shaped like a jade guide, and the Huayang Palace Patriarch Hall was built here. Not far away from the Patriarch Hall of Huayang Palace, it was once the place where the first Patriarch Jiamao studied. It was gradually expanded into a private residence with clusters of buildings. By the time it passed to the hands of the previous palace owner Gao Gu, it was already a well-established residence. According to the tradition of the virtuous live here and inherit the Taoism, whoever can serve as the palace master can move his family here, which is both a Taoist temple and a family home. When Gao Gu succeeded to the throne, he moved out of the old dojo and took over this place. However, because Gao Gu had no family members and heirs, he was alone, so the dojo here was always deserted. However, no matter how the house expanded and the owners changed from generation to generation, it was never overtaken by the guests. The one that occupied the main position was still the 10,000-volume library, which houses many spiritual books and secrets. The plaque reads, "The world is spectacular," which is not a boast. Mao Jue was taken up the mountain by Gao Gu and was here to guard the gate. The sword light flickered and a graceful figure stood there floatingly. The sound of the long sword returning to its scabbard sounded like a young phoenix. It was Nan Chong, the female sword immortal who had just left seclusion and the leader of the Huayang Palace sword immortal line. Xian looked happy and Jisho congratulated her. After all, she now had a great swordsman in her family. Nan Chong returned the gift with a smile. He was also the chief inspector of the Daoist sect. Xian followed the rules and the female crown was freehand. Nan Chong called Mao Jue fellow white-bone Daoist first. After a moment of hesitation she called, Palace Master, again. Harry Cohn didn't care about this. In the history of Defei Mountain, there have been many extraordinary people and noble figures. There are many statues of heavenly lords in the Patriarch Hall, but only 2 of them can be called sword immortals. Therefore, the South Wall was able to successfully come out of seclusion in this special year and add to the Taoism. Combat strength or whether this matter is heard better are secondary. The most important thing is that the South Wall is helping Huayang Palace, and this new world is a good omen showing the recent fortune of Huayang Palace, and was not greatly implicated by the death of his master. The idea of hair cone has probably been around in the lower-level market for a long time, and it always has a somewhat earthy smell. Just talking about the sword-wielding style of the female crown on the south wall, the Taoist officials in the mountain have naturally long been accustomed to it. The ordinary scenes here are mysterious from the many legends of strange monsters outside the mountains. Following the gazes of Palace Master Mao and Yin Tianjun, Nan Chong casually glanced at the scene on the other side of the mountain road. Without paying attention he asked curiously, "Is there any definite news about when Nye Jianxian will visit Huayang Palace?" Mao Zhu shook his head. Nye Bixia is now traveling through the wilderness with Zhang Fenghai, and has established a family. However, Xian took pains to warn, it is a big pass to rise from Yupu to Immortal. This time Shoshan Pavilion helped to protect the pass, the kindness and fate are not small. Master Nongguan must not do it casually. On my side, there are several jars of immortal wine that have been treasured for many years and are available on the market. They were obtained from a site left over from an ancient immortal corpse after he traveled down the mountain in his early years. After drinking 1 jar there will be no more. You only need to use it to entertain distinguished guests. I won't waste Yin Tianjin's wine. My Taoist friend from outside the mountain has a weird habit. I have seen people who are addicted to alcohol, but I have never seen people who smell their inner demons when they smell alcohol. Nan Chong waved his hands quickly and explained with a smile. The reason why I ask this is because he has admired Nye Jianxian for a long time. He is just waiting here and guarding the gate for me just by the way. Mao Zhu smiled. That young immortal with a promising future is the real drunkard who doesn't care about drinking. The problem is that Nanqiang doesn't understand the style and has let down the infatuated people. Nye Bixia, who was born in Yenzhou, was an elusive loose immortal with superb swordsmanship, but her everlasting lantern had always been placed in the main hall of Huayang Palace. There has been no information for 3,000 years, and it was only thanks to this lamp that the outside world was able to confirm that Nye Bixia had not been reincarnated. When Nye Bixia was ranked among the 10 candidates in this selection, the mountain became even more curious. Could it be that Nye Bixia had been hiding in a Taoist temple in Defei Mountain, secretly seeking opportunities to join the Tao? There are also some unsubstantiated rumors saying that Nye Bixia and Gao Gu had a good impression of each other on the road of spiritual practice, but unfortunately they were not destined to share the same fate. But even if she didn't become a Taoist monk, she could still be entrusted with her life, so Lu Bixia placed her natal lantern in Gao Gu's Huayang Palace. There was a young man on the mountain road who wiped his mouth, salivated and said in a strong local tone, "Sister, I heard that the fish in the pond and the bamboo shoots on the road in this mountain are unique, and they are not comparable to ordinary mountain delicacies. I'm drooling just thinking about it. I don't know if I can trade my foot strength for happiness during this tiring climb." The woman with a beautiful money hanging from her waist laughed softly and said, "Foodie." A noble boy from the Yang family was looking around. Taoist priests from this mountain go into the mountains to dig winter bamboo shoots and select yellow mud tips. After the beginning of spring, the bamboo shoots that come down from the mountain must go this way. They burst out of the ground as if taking revenge. They are all wearing armor and coming here to show off their power. The Taoist priest succeeded again, Peeling off the shells is like removing armor. The bamboo shoots are as white as snow, extremely fresh and tender, and the bacon is stewed in a pot. It is so delicious that the diners can only feel ashamed and chopsticks are flying. Nan Chong's gaze rested on the woman wearing a power fence on the mountain road, eager to try. They say that the Hongnongyang family has a unique way of concealing their own destiny and luck. I have just broken through so I can try it? Xian repeatedly tried to dissuade him. Master Nanguan, this is inconsistent with etiquette. You must not act like this. This group of wealthy young people from the Hongnongyang family traveled together, so how could they not be protected secretly by an expert? Nan Chong smiled as if he still hadn't given up the idea. In addition to her current state of mind, she also possesses an ancient secret technique that is extremely talented. She can do it without anyone noticing, and she won't do anything if the blindness is broken. Everyone knows that the Yang family of Hongnong has produced a stunning woman who can be said to be the most beautiful woman in the eyes of the monks in the mountains. It is said that in recent years the number of marriage seekers has exceeded the threshold. There are even more mysterious rumors. There was once a passerby expert who was proficient in facial features. He had already calculated her future fate of being a mother who would honor the world, then listen to politics from behind the curtain, and finally become an emperor on her own. If that's the case, whoever marries her back home will have a lot of fun. Her life is naturally the most prosperous one in the world, but the man who Ming Media is marrying her to? And the man's family? There are various opinions, and they almost say that she is the most beautiful woman in the world in 10,000 years. It seems that all the men in the world are waiting for her to grow up. Of course Nan Chong didn't believe it. He didn't believe there was such a thing in the world. He didn't believe there were women like this in the world. Mao Jue knew this, and it must have been Zhou's handiwork. As for the beauty of that woman, Mao Jue didn't think there was anything to be concerned about with a skeleton in danger of life and death. For those who practice Taoism, isn't it the greatest beauty to look at something for a long time? If you hear the truth in the morning, you will die in the evening. Seeing the Tao is like a flash in the pan. Nan Chong suspected that the woman who was praised as taking over the creation of heaven and earth and competing for the color of all spirits was hiding in the team at the moment. Mao Jue seemed to have guessed Nan Chong's thoughts and said calmly, "Others don't know, but you always know yourself." Nan Chong saw that the palace owner was already reminding him so much, so he had no choice but to give up. When dealing with Mao Jue, my first impression is that the young Taoist priest in front of me is majestic and really tall. It was very oppressive to have a close conversation with him. The so-called eye connection is just that you can tell who you meet with just one glance, them or us. The founder, Gao Gu, was too celestial and forgot the worldly things, which made all those who practice Taoism feel ashamed. The Taoist priest Mao Jue is too human. Going into the mountains is like moving a market up the mountain. Xian was relieved that Nan Chong had given up on that plan. This kendo leader who presided over the affairs of Demoguen had a natural personality, and the master did not dare to let her go down the mountain casually. The master didn't care much about general affairs. He only gave instructions to Xian, his direct descendant, on a few matters, which must be reported to him. Among them are the results of Nan Chong's travels and Gao Fu's discussions with others. Looking at the courtyard wall on the south wall, she actually doesn't come here very often. After all, this is Patriarch Gao's private dojo. It is not a forbidden place but a forbidden place. Like most of the Daifishan genealogy Taoist officials, she is the first to enter the mountain. Since the beginning of the day, I have been looking up to the patriarch with the Taoist name Jiue. Taoist priest Gaogu seems to be the top of Difei Mountain, the real peak. Wherever Gaogu is, the top of the mountain is there. The snow-white courtyard wall is not high, just like an ordinary mansion at the foot of the mountain. Several peonies have been transplanted into the courtyard, and more than 100 colorful flowers are blooming on the walls. There is a Zizai pavilion built nearby for watching fish, which is said to have been built by Grandmaster Gao himself. In the past, this young Taoist priest, who was famous all over the world, often watched a picture of a big fish lurking in the water alone. Maybe it's because there are too few friends with whom we can be sincere. Let this Taoist priest always walk alone regardless of whether he is in the mountains or outside. The pines and cypresses are ancient with lush branches and leaves, and their skin is like dragon scales. Pedestrians stand in the shade of trees to escape the summer heat, and their faces turn green when illuminated. The water in the pond next to it is extremely clear, with fish, algae and waterfowl swimming around, just like flying in the air. For example, the fish viewing pavilion, which serves to connect the landscape with the mountains and rivers, is a solitary figure with dozens of giant fish kept in the pond. According to the story, whenever friends come, the owner will catch them to entertain them. Born in Ruzhou, a small and remote country, and his hometown is that obscure county, Gao Gu has an ordinary background as a fisherman for generations by the water. Therefore, every time Gao Gu went out to relax in the mountains, he would often choose the wind and snow season, use a small boat as a coir raincoat man and cook wine and stew fish alone. He was probably a Taoist priest who lived in the secluded mountains and was good at refining qi and nourishing the spirit. Even though Difei Mountain was shocked by the death of Master Gao Enzu and all the disciples of Huayang Palace were in mourning, almost everyone like Yin Tianjun didn't know how to deal with it. It shows on his face. He wasn't heartbroken, just a little sad. I always feel that a true Taoist priest like Patriarch Gao should live another 10,000 years. When that person was gone, I realized that I had never known this person. All of them were really in awe of Grandmaster Gao. I always feel that this among gods is always pure in heart, unsmiling all year round, and has an unparalleled spirit of ice and snow. As long as Patriarch Gao is participating in the meeting of the Patriarch Hall, it seems that the entire Patriarch Hall will be a little colder. What Zhou Xian was thinking about was a very small past incident. A few young Taoist boys sneaked out of the Taoist temple at night. They had long been interested in the vegetable garden of an uncle, and gathered together to eat cucumbers and simmer potatoes. During this period they met an unfamiliar young Taoist official. Big eyes stared at small eyes, both parties looked embarrassed. There was a clever guy among the children who thought that if they wanted to avoid being caught as thieves, they should become thieves together. So he invited the Taoist priest who looked at his age and senior brother's appearance to have a midnight snack together. Fill your stomach. In the night, the firelight shines and the children's bright eyes seem to say, "Senior brother, please don't complain to the master, the temple owner and the others. The boards are not delicious." That Taoist temple is the lower courtyard of Zhuwei Palace, located in a secluded place on the mountain behind the secondary peak. The incense is not much better or worse. At that time, Zhou Xian and his two direct disciples in the lower courtyard Taoist temple watched the scene from a distance. Neither of them dared to disturb their respective masters and ancestors. 55. The Taoist priest and the fire are like two fires. Mao Zhui thought of an old almanac page. One of Gao Gu's senior brothers and a junior brother were both sword cultivators, and were respectively the first founders of Kuwaiging and Demuguan's founding sections 3,000 years ago. There was a dragon-slaying battle in the Haoran world caused by Lu Chen's intention to solve the problem of Tianyan. There was also a catastrophe of its own in the Qingming world, involving the Daohua Yizhou of the pseudo-15th incarnation outer demon. Yidou led the battle. The sword conquers the devil. In that battle, all the high-ranking Taoist officials from Baiyujing were dispatched. The Taoist priests lined the sky like blue cranes and besieged a state. Although the demon was finally suppressed, it still caused a continent to sink. Two of Gao Gu's fellow disciples died in that battle. Together with Gao Gu, they were the most promising figures in the Huayang Palace. Baiyujing had not announced anything and was willing to go there on his own initiative to help the people defend the way. Later generations simply cannot imagine that the Taoist priest Gao Gu, the person he admired most in his life, was once Yidou. In the Battle of Lu Chen, Gao Gu resolutely risked his life to go there just because it was Baiyujinjiu who was the master and the abbot in charge of the overall situation. On the road to Difei Mountain, outside a Taoist temple where people were doing their homework, a group of people stopped to rest by the pergola on the mountain road, drink tea and listen to Taoist sentiments. In a remote small county in Yingchuan County, there is a small Taoist temple that has just gained popularity. An old man named Chong Bo and a lively young man named Chin Tsong were sweeping the floor at dusk. An ancient state collapsed and turned into a land of great lakes. The alien demon, which had fled and hid again and whose traces were found by Lu Chen again and again, had to appear here. It shook its sleeves vigorously, trying to throw away those golden Taoist charms that were broken and connected. He dispersed and gritted his teeth and said, "Baiyujing is really a sinner. Pity our state, Lu Chen, for being a water country. Lu Chen, you have gone too far to bully others, so don't blame me for overthrowing the world." the Taoist priest wearing a lotus crown on his head, a Dharma image that truly stood tall and proud, smiled and said, "If the Taoist doesn't agree, you can't do it." 3 villages with different surnames are surrounded by mountains and winding yellow mud roads, following the stream. Year after year, chickens crow and dogs bark on the ground and smoke curls into the sky. Zhou Xian said he wanted to go to the village school to visit. Ningji said he had the key to the school. Zhao Xuxia then talked about where to eat and asked Ningji to lead the 2 gentlemen to the school. He happened to go there first. Chef Ningji will take them there later. Zhao Xuxia did not forget to apologize to the 2 gentlemen for not treating the guests well. Seeing that Jing Juzhong had no intention of refusing, Lu Shi smiled and agreed, saying that it was no trouble. Looking at the tall and thin figure of the young martial artist, Lu Xian said, "He can adapt." Jing Juzhong said, "If you see things with your eyes, the world will be brighter." Lu Qian felt this and said, "Lu Qian is right. The biggest problem of Confucianism is its unwillingness to talk about people's hearts carefully." Jing remained silent. Lu Zai's biggest problem is that he likes to focus on the shortcomings of Confucianism. The entire Qingming world was naturally overwhelmed by Dao ancestor, so he had no choice but to go to Leap Moon Peak and become a pure martial artist. Not to mention the wild dial engraving. Lu Fangxiao asked, "Indeed, a person who has eaten well cannot look back and dislike the lack of delicacies on the table. Do you want to say that I don't know how blessed I am despite being blessed?" Jing Juzhong said, "Since it is your problem, of course it is Confucianism's problem." Yasheng's sentence, "If you do something wrong, look to yourself," is it not talking about people's hearts in a straightforward and clear way? It's just that we scholars are illiterate. Lu Chen's so-called rivalry between Lu Shi and the Holy Master is actually just superficial. Lu Zai's Taoism and Confucianism have long been merged, making it impossible to distinguish them. Looking at the pros and cons of the situation of the 5 of them, regardless of Feng Yuanxiu's young age, it is true that Haoran and Lu Shi are the most comfortable walking around the world without restraint. No matter how open-minded Lu Feng was, he didn't like scolding. He immediately changed the subject, picked up a thread and said, "Over there at Tiandu Peak." Jing Juzhong nodded and said, "As soon as the Lizhu cave took root, it was like the dust had settled." Lu Shen finally gave up and admitted that he had no other choice. He had to lower his profile and go to the town in person to find another good opportunity. Lu Shen knew it well, and then if he misses it by 200 or 300 years, he will have no hope of joining the path. By that time, even if Zhou Zi is willing to give way, Lu Shen still won't be able to go far. Lu Qi couldn't help but laugh and commented, "The dog's tail follows the mink." Jing Juzhong shook his head and said, "When it was still Lizhu Cave Heaven, the geographical advantage was not on Lu Shen's side. When the cave heaven descended into a blessed land, there was an opportunity. Those who practice Taoism must always look for a chance of survival. Those who are proficient in numerology must not be let down by themselves. Count it to death." Lu Feng smiled and said, "The Lu family of the Yin and Yang family in Middle-earth has carefully planned a plan, using Master Qin and Luopa Mountain as coordinates. It seems that he is searching for a sword, but in fact he is going in the right direction. But Lu Shen seems to be missing a little bit of luck. This subtle point, the gap, makes a huge difference." Jing Juzhong said, "If you don't recognize people well and use them improperly, he will suffer the consequences and fail. If you don't have enough Taoist power, you can't blame Zhou Zi for blocking the way." Lu Feng said, "Lu Wei was already the best candidate that the Lu family had at that time. If he is attached to Ji Wei, the chances are not small. After all, Lu Shen is the head of the Lu family, so it is impossible for him to get involved personally. At the time it seemed that there is nothing wrong with God's choice. The head of the family, Lu Shen, was controlled by Zhou Zi and was always blocked outside the threshold of the 14th realm. He had been stagnant for a long time and was unable to penetrate the world due to his unique skills." Jing Juzhong shook his head and said, "In the final analysis, Lu Shen was still complacent back then. He thought he had glimpsed the secret of heaven and knew how powerful Zhou Zi was. Deep down in his heart he still underestimated Zhou Zi's Tao power. Where are the cultivators who are determined to prove the Tao? There is no room for chance." Lu Shi asked, "Mr. Jing seems to have a low opinion of Lu Shen in general?" Jing Juzhong said, "It's not low anymore." Lu Xian suddenly laughed to himself just because he remembered a Wenlin case with a similar meaning, which was between Xiu Hu and the old Master Li. When Cui Chan was young, he had personally annotated the world-famous Shan Hai Tu Shu, which was very important. There are many details in the content. Someone argued with him to defend Master Li, but Cui Chan said that if a book wants to disturb my eyes, it must first be able to get into my eyes. The implication couldn't be simpler. It's probably that I'm willing to scold you a few words, which is a compliment in itself, so don't be ungrateful. Such words reached Master Li's ears, but the old man didn't say anything at that time. During the last meeting at the Confucian temple, Qin Pingon discussed this matter with this old gentleman. In fact, Master Li, who was both civil and military, still misunderstood him as the senior fellow of the young Yingguan, and highly praised the book. Lu Shi suddenly asked, "Why don't those sword cultivators hate Qin Qingdu?" Xing Juzhong said, "I dare not." Miyu had previously been invited by Wei Bo to practice Taoism for the women in Changchun Palace. He once met an old Qi practitioner who asked for help in a dream and needed external help to save his body from disaster. Another example is Wang Jia, a monk from the Fuyao Island Dao named Xujuan. The reason why he pretended to be in the Ascension realm was that he carefully set up a situation and deliberately used his words, deeds and anger to provoke Song Pin's group of sword immortals, which then involved Qin Pingon and the great sword Qi Great Wall. Attracting Ning Yao, he tried to use his sword to solve the problem. On the sword Qi Great Wall, it is rare to see such things. How many young sword cultivators have only suffered a calamity until death? Even Miyu, a swordsman with a high level at that time, didn't know that there were disasters in destiny, methods to cope with disasters and ways to escape from disasters. But these are the common sense of Monk Howren. I guess even if I knew it, I would be too lazy to care about it and wouldn't take it seriously. To take a step back, if you really know it, will it be useful if you really care about it? Miyu and others were completely unaware, but Sun Jiuan and others knew it well. Lu Fang hesitated for a moment and said, "Huang Zhen is not easy to mess with. After all, he is a 14th level sword cultivator with the word, pure. Not to mention he has adventures." Having said this, even Lu Xiang, who is used to seeing all kinds of strange things, couldn't help but repeat, "an adventure." Of course, Lu Shi has selfish motives. After all, Huang Zhen is a figure who came out of Lizhu Cave and devoted himself to practicing Taoism. If we look at the present node, the future will last for thousands of years. Huang Zhen has always focused on refining swords and has no understanding of the world. He has no influence, has not established a sect, and has not even accepted disciples. Of course, Lu Xian will not dislike such a Taoist. In this matter, Huang Zhen and Qin Pingon, who have become mortal enemies, as well as Xing Juzhong in Lu Zai's eyes, since they are all Howren people, the palms and backs of their hands are all flesh, and it is best to be in separate shapes. If we live together in Quan, since the relationship is not good, we will never interact with each other, so why fight to the death? It's just that Huang Zhen was too obsessed with it. After attaining enlightenment, he had been pestering Qin Pingon for a long time. Just like a man who came from a humble background and worked hard to earn a wealthy family, he must make up for his miserable childhood in order to feel at ease. Xing Juzhong said, "I will be careful." That's why he went on a night cruise first to borrow the 2 natal flying swords from Beijing. Lu Shi was speechless, so Huang Zhen had to be even more careful. It is not difficult to win the 14th realm, but it is extremely difficult to kill the 14th realm. So you can imagine how difficult it is to completely eliminate a pure swordsman in the 14th realm. Neither party expressed their true feelings in their words, but Ning Ji heard it clearly. Ning Ji felt that Mr. Lu was an ancient man. Mr. Xing is more like a wife. Xing Juzhong said, "Ning Ji, don't just study. Books can enlighten the mind and also fool people. A scholar must be able to use books. Since studying is destined to be hard, books must be used by me." Ning Ji nodded knowingly. The little senior brother said something similar, "You need to read the book to the point of breaking through it." There are actually 2 interpretations of the word, break, when you read through tens of thousands of books. One is the literal meaning and the other means that you need to read every book thoroughly. Know which words are the true words of the author, which words are insincere words that go against his heart, which words are sharp-edged and murderous that do not agree with the world, which words are conciliatory and conciliatory with the world, which words are written with a smile, and which words are written with a smile. They are written with frowns, which ones are the wandering emotions, trying to find a confidant outside the book, and which ones are the master's secret words that hide his thoughts. Walking to the village school together, Lu Shi saw an old osmanthus tree in the mountains along the way. Lu Shi asked, Ningji, after reading the book, what do you want to do most? Ningji was a little shy and said softly, Senior sister and junior senior brother have both hinted and made it clear to me that I must first obtain merit and fame. I will take the academy and township examinations. I will be able to pass the test with overwhelming force. Pei Qian hoped that Ningji, his younger brother, could win the top prize and save Chao Qinglang from having to raise his tail. The big white goose thinks that Ningji is a good scholar who can study and practice Buddhism at the same time. When the time comes, he will win 3 yuan in a row, which will make his husband happy. Lu Shi smiled and said, There is no need to be embarrassed. Mr. Zheng, do you think so? Zheng Juzhong looked at the osmanthus trees in the mountains and nodded. The road of life, no matter when or where, is not about rushing to the examination room day and night. Study, make a living, get married, have children, become talented, seek saints and sages, seek immortality, become a Buddha and attain enlightenment. When the flowers are beautiful and the moon is full, people will live longer. I hope that all the kings will win the laurels. Sword of Coming Chapter 1151. The young Taoist priest is sitting on a small bamboo chair, with a mountain of poverty behind him. This is called having a backer. Xianwei dipped his saliva in his mouth and turned over a page of the book. Unconsciously, the snow-white paper and the pitch-black words were filled with a faint blush. When the Taoist priest raised his head, he saw that the sun was setting in the west, and there were still red burning clouds in the sky, still reluctant to leave and longing for the world. There is a book in your sleeve. You are so rich and noble. I have nothing to do today, little fairy. The long river of time is a dojo, and the days and I are like swimming fish swimming leisurely together. After the mountain patrol, the father-in-law's son who had been busy for a day had already been delivered to the door of his house. Xiaomi Li came to the foot of the mountain, tugged on the rope of the crossbody package and asked tentatively, Master Xianwei? The Taoist Xianwei understood it, nodded and said with a smile, I'll finish the work immediately. We'll take some when I have some free time. This is a riddle that belongs exclusively to him and Xiaomi Li. Nagging is also knocking and eating melon seeds is also knocking. After all, Lulu Mountain is not an ordinary mountain. We welcome and send visitors infrequently, and even if we occasionally receive guests, they are not ordinary people. When I'm free, I'm really free. Even if I'm busy, I can't keep him busy. The owner of the mountain generously allocated the fragrant volcano directly to Xianwei and his new disciples as a dojo to open the mountain. In recent days, Taoist priests Xianwei and Lin Feijing have been carrying hoes and dustpans on the other side of the mountain. With the hatchet in hand, we were busy working together to build bridges and roads, gradually building pavilions and building huts. Simple, there is no need to be so particular about it, but after all, it is the addition of bricks and tiles to one's own family. No matter how you look at it, you will feel happy. Xianwei did not ask for a tael of silver from Mr. Wei Wenlong, the accountant of Jisa Fengquan Mansion. With his salary as a janitor, it was more than enough. Besides, how could Chief Zhou not show any signs every time he climbed a mountain? As a man, when your money bag bulges, your waist will become stronger. The poor man is no longer poor now, he knows that he is a rich man. Wanshi sent a message, saying that it was the wish of the mountain owner that Taoist Master Xianwei could go to Xiangshan Mountain more in the near future. He was busy with important matters and there was no one to watch over the mountain gate, so it would be okay. Xianwei was the best at being rude to polite people, and he immediately humbly accepted the mountain master's suggestion. In the Xiangshan Mountain, he and the cheap disciple took a break between work, eating pickles and chewing dry food, with the gurgling sound of the stream in their ears. I drank a pot of glutinous rice wine with my apprentice among the mountain flowers and looked around. I always felt that every day was a good time to have a new look. There is no one on Luolu Mountain who dislikes Xiamili, but if we really want to say who chats with Xiamili the most, to be honest, if we count the number of words in the chat, it is really the gatekeeper Taoist priest Xianwei who has the most. It is estimated that Nguan Shu and Qin Lingjun are not comparable. Xianwei really likes to chat with Xiamili. He is very interested every time and is never bored at all. So much so that even Qin Lingjun and Bai Xian were in admiration. It would be a pity that Xianwei didn't open a school to learn from him. Xiaomi Li would also save those wonderful ideas that came to her during the mountain patrol, and then go to the mountain gate to share them with Taoist Master Xianwei. Occasionally, a few will run away, but they will often be picked up next time they patrol the mountains. One of them has nothing to worry about and the other has nothing to worry about. They talk about everything with their brows stretched out and lazily. The Xianwei put his hands in his sleeves like a farmer, with his palms stacked in his sleeves. Our sorrows are often brought about by yesterday, and worries are often worried about what will happen tomorrow. Even if there is a recipe for immortality in the world, how can we solve the problem that yesterday has passed? Things that have not yet come tomorrow. Buddhism says that things cannot be eliminated except the mind. As a common man, it is easy to do but difficult to do. How can we truly let things change according to our heart? Xiaomili shook his head and said seriously, Master Xianwei, you are an immortal who practices superb Taoism in the mountains. The young Taoist priest leaned comfortably on the back of the bamboo chair and said with a smile, Maybe Xiaomi has a clever trick, please give me some advice. Xiaomili laughed and said, Then just ask the right person. If you ask me how to practice immortal magic, I'm sorry, the big water monster in Dumb Lake can only wander the rivers and lakes. But if you want to ask me how to fight with unhappy, oh, I do have some insights. The little girl in black put her chin on her hands and blinked her eyes. She saw the high mountains, the curved water, the chubby white clouds, the big-bellied blue sky. There is no need to start with the real words in your heart. Yesterday's worries and unhappiness are all the grains of rice are small and big. Put them in the big happy bowl today, eat them, fill the gaps between your teeth and put the bowl on the big table tomorrow. The young Taoist priest gently touched his palms and exclaimed in admiration, That's right, that's right. Don't dedicate your limited body to dedicating millions of sorrows to the world. Xiaomili handed over another handful of melon seeds and Xianwei took it and said with a smile, I also have a bowl but I didn't bring it with me. I left it at my ancestral home. With a glass of wine in hand, big things are like mustard seeds. While eating melon seeds, small things are like the sky. Xiaomili rubbed her cheeks and hesitated to speak. Xianwei smiled heartily and said, Pin Dao didn't pop out of a stone. Of course he has his hometown and his ancestral home. Xiaomili chewed the melon seeds and whispered, Master Xianwei, Sister Pei said that you were not yet prosperous back then. When you were in Longyu Shoal, you were captured by the bandit den as the accountant. Sister Pei also said that you were the big guy. The plump female head of the house is strong and powerful. She covets your beauty and wants to steal you as her husband. Sister Pei also said that it was a shame that you refused to obey and used many tricks to pretend that she was in Beijing to take the exam. You son, after you are named on the gold list, you will definitely come back and it will be known that the matchmaker is marrying her. He brought her home in an 8-carriage sedan chair so that the female master let you go. When you left, you splashed ink and left a calligraphy treasure for the village. God rewards those who work hard. The bandits cheered loudly and the master sent you down the mountain and the pear blossoms brought rain. Is it true? The story is full of twists and turns. Xianwei Nanyan felt dizzy when he heard this. It's an embarrassing thing. Some of it was Xiao Haitan's exaggeration back then and some of it was real. For example, the head of the family was actually very handsome and as beautiful as a flower. As for the oath of eternal love, of course there is no such thing. There is a small town saying that describes something meaningless, and one would say, there is no bright spot. Plaques will be hung in the main halls of wealthy homes. If a bandit's den where people cut paths down the mountain hangs the slogan, Heaven rewards those who work hard, it will be used to encourage oneself every day. Master Xianwei, don't you consider the feelings of the people nearby and the merchants passing by? Xianwei recalled some past events and said softly, It is said to be a bandit's nest, but in fact it is a people who are driven to the mountains by the world to survive. There are people who block roads to make money, but there are none who kill people. After getting the money, the bandits still pay IOUs. After traveling all over the country for so many years, the only people who robbed the most villages were the old men who resigned and returned to their hometowns with lavish eunuchs. They often hired hundreds of people. Can you imagine those officials? When you leave office and hand over your seal, not to mention the tables and chairs in the government office, even the windows will be removed and moved home. I remember that Jizi has always wanted to save money, and when the debt is paid off he will build a famous martial arts sect and make a living as an escort. Every time we talk about this while drinking, the eyes of men, women and children all light up. Xiaomili held her cheeks with her hands, listening intently, listening to Taoist Xianwei's eloquent talk about the past. After taking another look at the sky and scenery, Xianwei raised his sleeves, shook them slightly, closed his eyes and reached out to count. Setting up a stall to tell fortunes, being able to pinch and calculate, and cutting gold with an iron mouth are the skills of traveling Taoist priests all over the world. Xiaomili asked in confusion. Master Xianwei, what are you doing? Xianwei slowly opened his eyes and said seriously, do the math and see if there is green pepper fried ham on the table today. Xiaomili rolled his eyes. Xianwei patted his belly and said with a laugh, food is the most important thing for the people, so you can't fool yourself. Xiaomili suddenly said, check again to see if there are any braised bamboo shoots. The Xianwei asked, if the right protector opens his mouth to order, the old cook won't show off his 120% skill? Xiaomili explained, Zhongqi has no discernment. He eats 3 meals a day plus a midnight snack and orders dishes every time. It off the old chef, so I won't add fuel to the fire. Besides, in private the old chef would send her and sister Nwanshu all kinds of pastries every now and then, so many that he could hardly even remember their names. Xianwei nodded vigorously, but he was actually very grateful to Zhou Xian, the toothpick-wielding man. Without him to face the difficulties, Xianwei and Jing Dafeng would not be able to get back to work. On the mountain road, a young man with an astonishing face walked slowly. Xianwei was already accustomed to this, but he couldn't lose his etiquette and stood up together with Xiaomili. When he arrived at the gate of the mountain, the young man pointed to the top of the mountain very close to Lulu Mountain, signed up for his number and said with a smile, distant relatives are not as good as close neighbors. I come from Tiandu Peak. My surname is Lu Mingshan and my Taoist name is Tianbian. The Xianwei said, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm a poor and mysterious person. I'm a down-and-out mountain gatekeeper. I've met fellow Daoist Lu. Tianbian, right? The boy's Taoist slogan is not bad either, Xuanshu. Let's see who has the more powerful Taoist slogan. But Xiaomili was curious as to why the music composer, who was always diligent, didn't show up. Lu Shen calmly turned slightly sideways, his face as usual. Xuanshu Immortal and Lulu Mountain really complement each other. If the mountain is not high, the Immortal will be spiritual, and if the mountain is not high, the Tao will be revealed. Xianwei couldn't speak for a while. Such kind words were a bit too much. According to Jing Dafeng, it's the heat, so pay attention to the heat. Lu Shen said straight to the point. I visited Luopa Mountain today to tell you something. I hope the Taoist master can tell it to Master Chen as soon as possible. Ma Kushuan in Xinghua Lane has a direct descendant. He is both the founding disciple and the closed disciple. This person is the town's master. The local people. As for the other apprentices recruited outside, it is Ma Kuxuan's trick. As for this person's name, I really can't say much. Xianwei was confused when he heard it, but he still nodded and agreed. Wei Bo followed Lu Shen to the mountain gate. Lu Shen said, I have met Wei Shenjun. Wei Bo looked unhappy. I don't dare to take it seriously. Lu Shen said from his heart, a few years ago Cui Guosher came to Tiandu Peak and had some honest remarks with me. Wei Bo frowned slightly. With Lu Shen's cultivation and methods, he deliberately concealed it, and the Dali court couldn't find any clues even if they wanted to. Of course, the premise is that Lu Shen's cross-continental journey and settling in Dali have the permission or acquiescence of Cui Han, the national preceptor. Tiandu Peak is located between Lulu Mountain and the town. It is closer to Lulu Mountain than Tiaoyu Mountain and Fiolu. Therefore it is not an ordinary close neighbor but like a next-door neighbor. On the surface, the immortal capital peak, which has great meaning, and the landlord recorded by the Dali court, are in Xianxia sect with similar background as the Huangliang sect. Over the years, Tiandu Peak, which has always been surrounded by immortals, has only a dozen or so mountain monks. There are no earthly immortals sitting on the top of the mountain. They live in seclusion, which is more like a closed mountain than Lulu Mountain. Occasionally, a monk would come down the mountain, and a young monk who had not yet reached the 5th level of the middle school would go to the city to buy some firewood, rice, oil and salt on a regular basis. Tiandu Peak and Lulu Mountain have never had any contact, and they are not even familiar faces. The top of the main mountain of Tiandu Peak is slightly lower than the main mountain of Lulu Mountain, Jiling Peak, so it does not hinder the line of sight. Qin Lingjun and the others can have an unobstructed view of the town from the top of their home. The identities of the 3 neighboring mountain masters are naturally kept in the archives of the Great Li dynasty. Wei Bo, as his immediate boss, the god of the 5 mountains, can of course consult them at will. But for so many years Qin Pingon had no intention of exploring it, and Wei Bo never mentioned it without asking. Later Fiao Foothills was secretly bought by Pei Qian with money. Tiaoyu Mountain was the private property of Changchun Palace Gani and was also taken over by Cui Dongshan. Xiago fell in love with Tiandu Peak and wanted to spend money to buy it as a dowry. It's a pity that when she mentioned this to Wei Bo only said that he couldn't buy it with money, and he had to wait until the master of your mountain became the Grand Master of Dali. Xiago is not the mountain master. She has already confirmed that there is indeed no earth immortal in Tiandu Peak, and even the Supreme Five Realms are practicing there. Otherwise, if she breathes and refines qi even slightly, she will know about it. If there is a time-honored ascension realm hidden in the mountains that is very good at concealing the secrets of the heavens, if it does exist, it is fine to hide it very deep, but it is best for fellow Taoists not to move. When Lu Xun chose to show up on his own initiative, this was what made Wei Bo feel depressed and annoyed. According to Wei Bo's unique information channel, Tiandu Peak did have a real landlord hiding behind the scenes, but Wei Bo never expected that this person and his family were still the pawns pushed to the forefront by Lu Xun. Therefore Wei Bo felt that it was his silence that misled the always cautious Chen Pingon. Damn it, this Tiandu Peak is the top of the mountain right under my nose. Wei Bo was scared to think about such a big mistake. Lu Xun, the head of the Lu family in Middle-earth, is so high in the sky that others respect you and fear you, but I, Wei Bo, will not tolerate you. Wei Bo was extremely unhappy and Lu Xun was quite depressed. The appearance of the girl in the mink hat is a big trouble. She doesn't know whether it's because she is idle or because she has special powers, but she has a spiritual consciousness every now and then regardless of day or night without any rules at all. She often secretly patrols Tiandu Peak, doing things in an unruly manner. She is really unscrupulous. This even God Lu did not dare to take it lightly, so he could only set up 3 small heavens and add dozens of secret spell restrictions to cover up his own energy. Spending a little spiritual energy and a sum of fairy money is nothing, but it is a huge waste of time and makes Lu Xun helpless. Later, in the Lu family in Middle-earth, Qin Pingon and the girl in the mink hat returned to the world from the outer world. Evil guests came to the door. Couldn't be more familiar. Not only is his swordsmanship amazing, he is also good at many Taoist arts. Even Lu Xun, who considers himself to be a good monk, almost doubts whether Bai Jing is similar to Ruan Xiao and Li Lu. Lu Xun looked up at the mountain gate archway and said to himself, "The enemies of my enemies may not be friends, but at least there is a certain chance of becoming allies. Zhou Zi is my sworn enemy on the Great Road. He goes up to the world and down to the earth and he can never get ahead. It's extremely painful. Since the goals are the same, he has his dragon-slaying skills and I have my own dragon-drawing and dragon-supporting skills. Then let's show off our magical powers and compete. The matter of cultivating the Tao is to sail against the current. A Taoist heart must never retreat even a little bit, and a Taoist spirit must never fail in the slightest." Xiaomi Li had already sensed that something was wrong in the atmosphere. It was rare to see Wei Shanjun looking so annoyed, so she sat on the small bamboo chair, looking at her nose and heart, and her mind went to the old cook's kitchen. 55. The Xianwei was also sitting upright, but he looked at the young man with a great name from the corner of his eye. Judging from his attire, he didn't look like a rich man, but since he could have Wei Shanjun come to entertain guests in person, his identity must be very intimidating. Wei Bo didn't bother to talk around with Lu Xun and sneered, "May I ask the head of the Lu family, when did you come to Tiandu Peak to personally plan the great cause? The state-owned legal family has family rules and rural covenants, and the high-ranking landscape gods are within their own jurisdiction. It is their duty to help the Orthodox court keep an eye on the developments of the monks and the Immortal Mansion." Lu Xun said calmly, "It is customary at the foot of the mountain that the winter solstice is like the new year. I arrived at Huaihuang County on this day. After some rough research, I chose Tiandu Peak as a temporary dojo. On the second day of the first lunar month of the new year, I was in the mountains, saw Shanju Chen's face for the first time." Note 1, Chapter 188, Rules and Trivialities. At that time, all the mountains in the west were undergoing large-scale construction, opening caves, building mansions and adding immortality to the Taoist temples. Luopa Mountain had a mountain temple that was officially sanctioned by the imperial court because of Jilin Peak. Once it's settled, don't dare to spend a single copper coin less. The young mountain master had found something ready-made, and he didn't need to spend money on opening roads and other things out of his own pocket. As for making a swollen face and pretending to be fat, it had to be shown to others. At that time, Qin Pingon was only accompanied by Qin Lingjun and Wan Shu. There was a big mountain, just the three of them, and at most one mountain without assistants or mates. On this day, according to local customs, he was supposed to start visiting relatives to pay New Year greetings. Naturally, Qin Pingon had no relatives to go with, so he simply took the boy in green and the girl in pink to the mountains. Lu Xun couldn't help but have a complicated look on his face and said slowly, "The boy with straw sandals on the road is close to the water. He looks up at the clouds and the jackal. He carries water and fire and a hatchet at his waist. He goes up the mountain and climbs to the top to see the sky." On Difei Mountain, Mao Jue seems to be teaching the swordsman Nan Chong. Lord Heavenly Lord Yin Xian was extremely pleased. Taoism emphasizes the relaxation of nature and the natural way of Taoism. So you can work steadily and easily become an immortal. This is your ability. Whether ordinary people can cultivate Taoism depends on whether there is a way to come. After entering the mountains, they start to refine their qi and preserve their spirits. Whether they can finally achieve Taoism depends on whether they can find a way out. The mountains stand tall and the rivers flow just like people express their feelings. But no matter how high the mountains are, can they pierce the sky? No matter how majestic the rivers are, the destination is still the sea. You are a student of swordsmanship and have devoted your life to pursuing the origin of swordsmanship. Therefore, it is difficult to find people who share the same path while practicing in Difei Mountain. It is inevitable that you will feel that you are alone in your way. Over time, as your level increases, you will easily become arrogant. Of course, you also have your difficulties. As the abbot of Damu Temple and commanding more than 100 sword cultivators, you need to bear the honor and disgrace of the Huayang Palace sword immortal lineage. You can use this convenient method to unite people's hearts without any question. Nan Chong smiled and said, "More than 100 people?" This was clearly her starting to find fault. Palace Master Mao had just entered Huayang Palace, so he must be busy with official duties and not familiar with the specific situation of Demoguen, a Taoist tributary, which is reasonable. Even though Mao Jue had recommended her as the leader of Difei Mountain, Nan Chong should be somewhat grateful, but she always had an indescribable awkwardness when getting along with him. When a cultivator with a keen sense of spiritual awareness has such inspiration, he must not take it lightly. The sleeping area should be small so that it is easy to rest your mind. The study room should be large enough to gather energy. Therefore, the library is very tall and covers a large area, and Mao Jue's residence is very small. He just randomly picked a small courtyard near the gate. There is actually a white gauze mosquito net in the house that is common in people's homes down the mountain. Not to mention the enlightened people in the mountains, even those accomplished martial arts warriors can drive away mosquitoes and flies by themselves with an invisible force of energy, and frighten the wild beasts in the mountains. It's a good thing that no one visited the humble house, otherwise everyone in the south would be suspicious. This Bone Master, who has obviously reached the ascended realm long ago, lives such a simple and ordinary life. Who is he showing off to? Mao Jue said calmly, "Damu Temple is a Taoist priest, and the ancestral hall has a total of 6 generations of genealogy, a total of 105 people. You have been in retreat recently, and I will only know better than you where all of them are currently practicing Taoism." Nan Chong asked, "It seems that Gao Qiong is going to retreat. Has fellow Taoist White Bones seen her?" She was a little girl that Patriarch Gao brought back from his hometown a few years ago. Her qualifications were not very outstanding, but the palace master personally led the person up the mountain. Nan Chong and Demoguen were certainly very fond of her. Mao Jue said, "According to the secret manual passed down to Gao Qiong by Zhiwei Palace, if she practices step by step to break through seclusion, something will definitely go wrong. She will not be able to pass the Dragon Gate and she will most likely fall into the realm. I have asked someone to do it. Secretly taught her 2 sword arts, one specifically about dividing water, and the other about refining mirage swords. When she reaches the point where her mind is in tune, the Taoist formula will be able to manifest the Dragon Gate and a river in Baidi City, and the Taoist priest will be immersed in it. Shaped like a water dragon walking across the river to climb the Dragon Gate, it can increase her chances of winning." Nan Chong was very surprised. He never thought that our palace master Mao really knew all the sword cultivators at Demoguen? Is it because Grandmaster Gao had secretly given instructions before, or was Mao Jue trying to open up the situation through Damu Temple? The new official took office, and the sword immortal lineage that had not made much progress in the hands of Grandmaster Gao, if it starts to flourish on Mao Zue's side, isn't this a common tactic used by Xianxia officialdom? Mao Zue said, Lu Chen has a study which is not located in Nanhua City, his dojo. It is built in Yushu City and is called Guanqian Sword Studio. Nanqiang didn't know what Mao Zue was doing when he mentioned this. Isn't this something known to the whole world? Mao Zue said slowly, it's prepared for me. Nanqiang was stunned. She openly admitted her mistake and said with shame, fellow Taoist white bones, I judged a gentleman with a villain's heart and looked down on you. Mao Zue said, no matter who inherits the Taoist lineage of Huayang Palace, you will be hostile to him. You feel that no matter the merits and morals of any Taoist official, he is not worthy of sitting in the chair of the Patriarch Hall. Furthermore, you are a human being. He is a Taoist priest who is particularly energetic, and he is also a sword cultivator, so when you stand next to Master Bai Gu, who is also a sword cultivator, it is natural that you feel a potential danger, which is a kind of prediction that goes beyond instinct. If I were in Huayang Palace, if you have murderous intentions, you will be the second to notice. Nanqiang asked curiously, who is the first Yin Tianjun? Mao Zue glanced at Nanqiang. Maybe he didn't quite understand why she asked such a question. Behind the south wall, I finally realized the truth. It was the real owner of this mountain, the Tai mountain god. Mao Zue walked to the water's edge. Perhaps the fish swimming in the pond mistakenly thought he was his old master, and started to gather around him. The old blind man cut out his eyes, and forcibly cut off a piece of land in the wilderness to create 100,000 mountains. The 5 elements of native gold kept moving into the mountains, supplemented by the group of divine generals and warriors wearing golden armor, suppressing the powerful Tao Qi from all the air palaces in the body almost rises to the sky, preventing the body from rising to the sky. The master of Bixiao Cave in Luobaotan, and later Donghaiguan Taoist Temple, have been so unforgiving since ancient times. If anyone dares to harm Pindo's Taoism, Pindao will cut off your favorable circumstances. Pure freedom, the ability to do everything you want to do, say no to anything you don't want to do, and be completely able to bear the cost. How many ordinary people give up the glory and wealth of the world and go to the mountains to seek immortality? They only seek enlightenment and longevity, and extravagantly hope to live as long as heaven and earth. Only Lu Chen's pursuit has never been the so-called 15 realms, or even the perfection of the Great Road, but only to see my true self. I don't know whether he was touched by the scene or just sentimental. He lowered his head and stared at the fish in the water. In an instant, the fish mistakenly thought that there was bait in the water. They scrambled for food for a while, but in the end it was all in vain and they all dispersed. Except for the swordsmanship that breaks through the illusion of life and death, it seems that Lu Chen has given all his longing for the world to a pair of bones. Lushan Mountain. Qin Lingjun was burping with wine all the way back from the Tiefu River water god mansion. The boy in green had sharp eyes and saw what seemed to be a visitor at the mountain gate. He immediately put away his magic, pressed down the cloud head, floated on the road and concentrated on it. Look again and again, it's okay, it doesn't look like the heroic figures in the collection of passers-by. Then go and meet for a while, have enough wine and food and feel in good spirits. This was not a mistake between him and the new water god by Deng and Rongxing Miaozhuang. They were all brothers. They had not seen each other for several days and missed them very much. They made an appointment for the 3 brothers to have a good meal today. Before picking up the glasses, they did not forget to remind Bai Deng to only have a small drink and not to delay official duties. Zheng Qiu packed up his clothes and went to Shuifu to help his brothers. He worked as a dog-headed military advisor, taking care of his criminal title, money and food, and being a master. He made money in a good way and controlled his subordinates well. Remind Bai Deng of many tips for dealing with people, how to deal with bosses, control subordinates and make friends with colleagues clearly. Bai Deng's character and temper were indeed a bit rough due to his Dao roots. Thanks to Tsing's mistakes in planning and Qin Lingjun's checking and filling in the gaps, he saved a lot of effort. The position of the water god is now secure. Qin Lingjun swung his sleeves and walked towards the mountain gate. He found Wei Bo and the young man with an unfamiliar face looking at him with respect. Strange, there's something wrong with Wei Bo ever since he became the night god. His nose is not a nose, his eyes are not eyes. Is the sun coming out in the west today? Finally, he found that Xiao Mili and Xian Wei were winking at him and gesturing behind him. Qin Lingjun turned his head and was startled. It turned out that 2 people came up the road and they looked like scholars. Qin Lingjun looked happy, turned around, put his hands on his hips, stood in the middle of the road and laughed loudly. Nephew Xianxia. We saw each other last time, long time no see. Xing Juzhong smiled and nodded. Lu Xiang on the side had no expression on his face. Tut. I have seen people who are cruel and life-threatening, but I have never seen someone who dares to mistreat Xing Juzhong as Xing Juzhong. Xing Juzhong just didn't have his name engraved on his forehead. The kid and Xingyi couldn't recognize it. Qin Lingjun was wondering why the temporarily unidentified scribe looked a bit stooped. Lu Xun on the other side of the mountain gate remained calm, but his eyelids trembled slightly. Qin Lingjun strode towards the apprentice of his brother Qin Zhuliu, put his hand to his mouth and said in a low voice, "My nephew, if you haven't had time to find an inn in the county, why not stay at my house in the mountains? You can choose the east and west wings. If you don't like it, the houses on both sides are small, so it'll just leave the main house for you to live in. If my family doesn't speak the same language, there will be no host or guest, so you won't be polite or pretentious." After thinking about it again, the boy in Xingyi quickly added, "If you like to be quieter and more comfortable, there are a few nice houses in the mountains. I'll take you to have a look. Let me know if you like them. Poor scholars are all good-looking. Understand? Then the friends around the poor scholar must not be rich, Lao liar." Weibo had nothing to say and put his hand on his forehead. But he was too lazy to explain anything to Qin Lingjun. This has been the case for so many years. Xing Juzhong said, "Exen Ling, no need." Qin Lingjun was obviously a little disappointed. He fisted his fist and smiled brightly again. "I have to have a meal before leaving. I have a good cook at home and his skills are quite good." Lu Feng smiled and helped to relieve the situation. "Unfortunately, fellow Taoist Jingqing, we just had a home-cooked meal at Zhou Xian and Ning Jie's place." Qin Lingjun was not discouraged. "Then let's talk about it next time, save this meal for now." Good brother Qin Zhuliu was a poor scholar with little money in his pocket and a thin face. Scholars have such virtues, so Qin Lingjun and the old cook borrowed some serious books, sorted them into categories and put them on the table. It is convenient for them to browse through it when they live there one day. Set up a table in the yard and there are only empty wine glasses on the table. There is no point in empty wine jugs. There is enough wine. Calling by Mangan plus brother Jia, who has always been in love with him, called him up the mountain. Then the four of them would gather at a table, fist pump and drink, having a good time. Every morning, whoever gets up first just shouts when walking out of the door. An arrow pierces the clouds and thousands of troops come to meet each other. "Brothers, where is the morning wine?" Qin Lingjun remembered something and said from the bottom of his heart, "My nephew, to tell you the truth, I have always had a bright mind and am famous for not being confused about important matters. This is not because I was sitting on the steps chatting and spanking with your master earlier. I am not thinking of you and when you can chat with Master Xing and Big White Goose. I thought this was quite strange. My brain twitched and I was confused. I guess you are the demon Xing from Baidi City. Ba ba ba. Tong Yen Wuji, must be the righteous and heroic Mr. Xing. Hey, he almost scared himself to death." Lu Xian and Lu Shen looked at each other and then they both looked at Wei Shinjun, the chivalrous and courageous Xing Juzhong, who taught Luo Luoshan. Weibo had no choice but to rely on his understanding and self-taught. Xing Juzhong smiled and said, "If I were Xing Juzhong, then wouldn't my master be Qin Qinglu? If he were Qin Qinglu, you and the man who killed the dragon could be brothers. From now on, what are you afraid of?" Weibo was inevitably a little worried. No matter how outspoken Qin Lingjun is in his words and actions, he is still a conscientious person. Lu Feng was more curious about how the boy in Xingyi would respond. Lu Shen felt that murderous intent was everywhere as soon as Xing Juzhong said these words. Unexpectedly, the boy in green just tilted his head and remained still. It was hard to tell whether his eyes were clear or confused. He just stayed there. Huh. After staying for a long time and shaking his head vigorously, Qin Lingjun stretched out a finger and shook it. No, that's not the calculation. I don't know the specific reason, so I don't know much about it." Xing Juzhong said, "What about leaving some for now?" Qin Lingjun laughed endlessly. To be able to chat with him, he must be someone who has read but not read much. Lu Shen felt as if he was facing a formidable enemy, and his heartstrings became tense. Why did Xing Juzhong come here? Even so, Lu Shen still acted politely with the people around Xing Juzhong, holding his breath and concentrating, performing an ancient ritual. Lu Shi just turned a blind eye. Going to the mountain gate and walking, The boy in green clothes first exchanged a fist salute with the strange young man who was very polite. He seemed to have thought of an explanation, scratched his head and said a sincere word to the nephew Xianxia. I just want to make a few true friends. It doesn't matter whether their status is high or low, whether their wealth is big or small, whether their money bags are bulging or flat. The tabletop where the wine and bowls are placed is always flat. Jing Juzhong was stunned, smiled knowingly, nodded and said, Uncle sure knows how to drink. Sword of Coming Chapter 1152. A group of visitors rested under the vines, drank tea and listened to Taoist sermons, feasting their ears to the melodious sound of jade chimes. The aura of heaven and earth brought up rippled like running water, as if all the ancient branches and leaves near the Taoist temple had been washed, making them greener and greener. Since Huayang Palace had not yet issued an order to expel guests, they walked all the way to the Patriarch's palace and gradually climbed up along the main Shinto. From a wide field of vision they could see the Defei mountain ferry in the distance. In the field of vision the figures of Taoist officials could be seen, as small as an ant, coming and going like a shuttle. There is a huge cross-state dragon boat which is the most eye-catching. It is 100 feet long and more than 10 feet wide. The head and tail scales and beards are all carved with gold ornaments. The buildings on the ship are like Qianglu and Yiyu, planted with ancient pines and strange cypresses, just like a complete Taoist temple. It is said that this famous ferry belonging to Tuwei Palace has a mystery hidden at the bottom of the cabin. Large iron coins are densely arranged like a tabletop, which is called successful money, to withstand the tilt of the hull caused by clouds, waves, wind and rain during the voyage. The young man with a fierce face was the first to break the silence and asked, The ancestor of the military strategist Grandmaster Jiang has been silent for thousands of years. This time he joins hands with his Taoist companions to come out again. The noise is not small and he must have a big plan. If you are him, what will we do? Use local materials and make some deductions. On the top of the mountain, Mao Zhuai began to look at this group of children from aristocratic families with admiration. They were not very young and capable, but they were very courageous and bold. Xian looked even more embarrassed. These troublemakers who knew nothing about the world really dared to talk about anything. However, it can be seen that Hong Nongyang is indeed well informed. There are many Taoist officials in the dynasty who have never even heard of the surname of the ancestor of the military family. There was a young man holding a wicker that he stole from somewhere, shaking his wrist, walking leisurely and said with a smile, The first step is to enter the ancestral palace of the main military family. If you can use the Zhongtu martial arts temple as a private dojo, right? But Jiang Taigong, Mr. Wei and others are willing to give up. This is a huge problem that is destined to be unavoidable. If I go all out to attack the ancestors, since I am a military strategist, I have to. Hey Grandmaster Jiang, Mr. Jiang, it's such a coincidence that they both have the surname Jiang. I don't know if that's right. One dares to ask and the other dares to answer. They are indeed a pair of brothers with different surnames who are very attached to each other just after they met. There is nothing taboo about talking about these things. Just like the Qi practitioners in the world who drank a little wine and said they wanted to fight Bai Yujing. But the problem is that they are in Defei Mountain at the moment, so it is always inappropriate. Secondly, even if the military strategists are of one mind and are willing to acknowledge him as their ancestor. Next, we have to look at the attitude of the Chinese Confucian temple. After all, Haoren is a world of scholars. The key is whether the ceremonial saint nods or not. Yixing and Wensheng are two of them. Whether you acquiesce to this matter or hold a negative opinion is of course also important. In the end, even after passing these two passes, the top priority is whether the fishermen who refused to dock to allow the Holy Master to board the boat recognized the military master named Jiang or not. 3 invisible battlefields, layers of passes. It all depends on how the ancestor of the military strategist arranged his troops, passed the passes, beheaded the generals and gradually attacked the city and built the stronghold. By accident, the man surnamed Jiang couldn't get along with the Confucian temple and insisted on quarreling with each other. The hard-earned era of peace will return to the chaotic world and become the same as our current world in Qingming. An ancient-looking old man said with a smile, Is there a possibility that Jiang Taigong's fishermen will take the bait? How to say? For example, the ancestral family of the military family has long wanted to fight together again, trying to make the first ancestor take the blame for himself, and eradicate the root of it justly? Is there someone else hiding behind the scenes who is ambitious and has been planning for a long time to take over the magpie's nest? What if the first ancestor of the military strategist and the fisherman had already been on the line, bypassing the Confucian temple and joining forces with the barbarians? Are they determined to completely change the world with one hand? Rearrange Howren. The topic was discussed together. Everyone had their own opinions and there was a lot of discussion and chaos. On the top of the mountain, Xian said, "The young man who started the topic first, Guan Liao, went by the pseudonym Xianxia and is a casual cultivator. He seems to be from the Little Four prefectures, and he carries with him a strong water vapor unique to Luai's lake." Nan Chong had a different opinion. At first glance he looks like a libertine who steps on watermelon rinds. Shouldn't he just come back from enjoying the flowers at Luai's lake? Xian shook his head. Taoists usually travel, how can they stick to water transport? The two lake owners named Wang and Lei Yu, one is withdrawn and the other is unscrupulous. How can outsiders dare to show off? Mao Zhui said, "It's hard to say what the specific sex family education is, but it is certain that he has a close relationship with the Tai lineage. At least he has dealt with Wang, who likes to raise geese more than once or twice. Just say that the scholar around Shangjiao has a good background and is not something that ordinary people can control." Shanin Yuk's surname is Wang, Tao name is Tai, the owner of the dry lake in Xiaosizu, the old Taoist priest, and Lei Yu, who is from the demon clan, are all candidates. Nan Chong failed to see the background of the lazy book boy and asked curiously, "Strange or mysterious?" "Weird, either an old immortal, who began to practice in ancient times or even ancient times, or an ancient object became a spirit, gave birth to a little true spirit, transformed into a human form and embarked on the path of cultivation. Miraculous attributes are mostly the reincarnation of gods or the turning around of a certain great monk." Mao Zhui said, "When we meet you can ask yourself." Nan Chong smiled sweetly and said, "Since I can't use magic to see through their deception, it's just like guessing lantern riddles. It's quite interesting." Mao Zhui narrowed his eyes. For some reason he changed his mind temporarily and said to Xian beside him, "Xian, please pass on the message and allow them to go up the mountain. Let's meet and chat for a few words." It's really a mixed bag. There are more than 10 people in this mountaineering team. After careful research on the origins of their families and dojos, it turned out that there are at least 4 places. He would like to see the rhetoric, the talk on paper, and the nonsense. It's still true talent and practical learning with a clear goal. Xian's face was troubled. There was no set rule on how to treat guests here. It was said that no one came to congratulate Mao Zhui for his promotion to the palace master. This was an isolated case in the mountains. Mao Zhui said, "It doesn't matter, just go and stay at my house." Xian breathed a sigh of relief. In this way Huayang Palace's etiquette was quite sufficient. In this truly mixed mountaineering team, the Hongnong Yang family has a pair of siblings, 2 accompanying maids and a guard. The apparent identity of the siblings who submitted the ultimatum at the mountain gate shows that they are not Taoist officials now, Yang Zheng or Yang Yu. The boy's name is not ordinary. The woman wearing a power fence has a graceful figure even though her face is covered. There is a maid on the side gently swinging a folding fan. The fan depicts a magpie on a branch, which means joy. The handsome young man wears a 3-mountain crown on his head, a refreshing deep purple straitjacket, and a sash tied around his waist. Yang Huang looked arrogant and liked to look at people sideways and rarely looked at people directly. At this moment he was taking out a kind of oily honey which was nicknamed xylear, and offered it to his sister, who lifted up a corner of the rice cake and chewed it gently. One of the 2 maids has a soft face but looks like a man. She wears a narrow robe of variegated brocade and gold silk. The short knife hanging on her waist is extremely eye-catching. He was given the surname Yang and the given name Yupian. The other maid was called Luzhu and she was holding a round fan. She seemed to be a few years older, but she was just pretty in appearance. She wore a small hat, a yellow embroidered wide shirt outside, and a narrow green shirt inside. A little further away from them, there was a lean man with a dull expression, as if he was trying to catch the Yang siblings and the miscellaneous people who were climbing the mountain together. Every time verification appears, please do not use incognito mode. Separated. His true appearance is that of a sword-wielding man wearing 5-color armor and a faceplate to cover his face. He is tall. His armor is wrapped with a gorgeous belt in the style of a snake made from ancient rituals. He looks like an ancient general. He wears a pair of cloud head shoes like court boots. In addition to them there are 2 Qing guests of the Yang family. The old man has a strange face, 3 long beards and narrow eyebrows. They are like the statues of gods and ghosts in the ancestral temple, with a dark and ancient atmosphere. The middle-aged man next to him seemed to be a disciple, with a reserved look on his face. He couldn't help but glance at the maid holding the fan. There are 3 siblings with different surnames. Among them is a man named Xianxia, who is accompanied by a boy named Xiao Bing. Su Duan and the lean, taciturn red-faced man have been friends for many years and have met here. This time we traveled together to the mountains. Originally they had no intention of using any deceit or false ultimatums. They just followed the Hongnong Yang family's descendants to climb the mountain. The little book boy was sick and listless. It's like the coolness in the mountains making people drowsy. The red-faced man said from his heart. Third brother, on the way here in an inconspicuous barren mountain field, I met an extraordinary person, a true hermit. Shang Jiao didn't take it seriously. Isn't he the kind of person who is just trying to gain fame? The red-faced man said, I have been tested a lot but my level is higher than mine anyway. Logically speaking I shouldn't be so rash but I really couldn't help it. Fortunately the other party has a good temper and didn't care. If it were left to the outside world there would probably be a fight. He doesn't seem to be very good at fighting with others, but his level is there. If I can't kill him with one blow I will definitely be killed by him. Shang Jiao was shocked when he heard this. Is the realm higher than yours? One of the sworn brothers next to him is Luo Yi, whose Taoist name is Huoguan. He and Xiaoyin Ho Wuxia are both among the 10 candidates in Qingming Tianxia. Of course, Shang Jiao has access to many strange people. When it comes to family background, friends and relationships with elders, among the younger generation, even the guy who gave Yang Jing a alias as a businessman in the entire Qingming world can be ranked high. Because of this he dared to talk about this in the main Shinto of Difei Mountain, almost in front of Master Baigu. If he dares to make such a mistake relying on his identity and background he is underestimating Shang Jiao, just because he is too familiar with Difei Mountain. The 2 sisters also wanted to see the place where their brother practiced Taoism in the past. The small Taoist temple where he just stopped to rest was where he spent his early years. The red-faced man nodded and said, There is no doubt that he is definitely a level higher than me. Shang Jiao's eyes sparkled and he suddenly became interested. I must help introduce you. It doesn't matter if you are rejected. The red-faced man smiled and said, That's easy to say. Shang Jiao always had some wild ideas and asked everyone curiously, why do some ancient books describe Taoist ancestors with the saying that Tao is like a dragon? Isn't it the kind of spring and autumn writing style that praises and denigrates openly? Everyone seemed to be stunned by the question and there was silence for a while. After all, when it comes to Daozu no one can say anything nonsense. Even Yang Huang couldn't help but look at Yang Jing. Sister, brother Shang Jiao's question is very tricky. Can you read a few more books and answer it? The mealy woman shook her head. Shang Jiao continued to ask. There is another description of a person's strategy which is far superior to that of his peers at the same time. Why is he called great wisdom and almost a demon? Is this a compliment or a curse? Still looking at each other. The ancient-looking old man who had been silent until now smiled and said, Fellow Taoist Shang, both of these statements actually have their origins. Shang Jiao's eyes were bright and he asked sincerely, How do you say it? The old man slowly said, It is said that in ancient times, there was a naturally formed team that stretched extremely long on the road in the world, as if it stretched like a snake. During this period Taoist priests heard the Tao, practiced and proved it, and they all performed the transformation of dragon and snake on land. The Taoist priests, when we were leaving, whether we were crying or laughing, we never forgot to kneel down and bow down to the Taoist priest who was walking in the front. Later, more Taoist priests joined in, and then there was a relatively simple bowing ceremony. The one walking at the end of the team is Dao Ancestor. In addition, one of the Taoist priests walking at the front of the group not only listens to the Taoism at a close distance, but also protects the Taoism part-time, and imparts the Dharma selflessly. If he hears something and understands it, he will take the initiative to preach behind him and never hide his secrets. Whenever there is a severe drought, he does not hesitate to expend his own energy, change his body shape, fly into the clouds and mist, perform water magic and bring down the rain, which is a great merit in the world. Unfortunately, the same people made a big mistake later and were hated by the gods. It's a doomed one and only 1 in 10,000 can escape. As for the other metaphor, it describes a certain woman who is proficient in refining things. She is from the demon clan and has great wisdom, so it was not derogatory at all at the time. Hearing this, Xianxia sighed. How did the old gentleman know these old almanacs? The old man couldn't help laughing and asked, "Of course it's just hearsay, otherwise?" Xianxia laughed endlessly and begged for mercy with his fists in his hands. The old man seemed to be aroused by this topic. There were golden threads swimming in his eyes as deep as an ancient well, just like a dragon lurking in the abyss. Even though many years have passed, after all, they are all witnessed and experienced by Qi. It is difficult to forget things that are very close to Qi. There is no need to deceive yourself. Yang Huang followed up and asked, "It's easy to talk about 5-color soil, but what about 10,000-year soil? Is it possible that the soil that can be seen everywhere in the world also has an age?" Yang Su is a talker. No wonder his sister Yangjing always said that he should have been mute in his previous life, and he would make up for it in this life. The old man replied with a smile. Among the 5 elements, earth is the hardest to maintain purity. If you don't believe it, just look down at our feet. If this earth which carries all things and all living beings is too clean, like can that pure water feed fish? The mealy woman nodded. This statement is extremely strange, profound, and indescribably wonderful. Yang Huang immediately looked at the old man with admiration. The young man only knew that this Chinka of the Yang family, who called himself Deaf Taoist, was a member of the Han clan in Xiaxia. He often went to the Yang family to catch the autumn wind. Discussing Taoism is just a small accomplishment in Taoism. He has been fond of collecting throughout his life and is good at connoisseurship. He is a master of editions and catalogs. Having met him twice in the family before, Yang Su thought he was just a talking celebrity who cheated on food and drinks, but he never thought he actually had some skills. The person who paid the least attention to these worldly affairs and couldn't even say a word was the absent-minded middle-aged man next to the ancient-looking old man. Shang Jiao saw that the man named Tiangong was bored, so he took the initiative to chat with him. After some chatting, he was no longer bored. The Communist Party of Tianjin only regarded Shang Jiao as a foil figure to himself, so he sympathized with him and chatted with him in a somewhat impure Yuzhou Mandarin, but he was grateful in his heart. Of course, it wasn't that Tiangong had for the maid named Lu Zhu. Tiangong didn't have the guts to do so. He couldn't reach out to anyone close to the direct descendants of the Hongnong Yang family, even if it was a maid. I always felt that her facial features were somewhat similar to those of a person from her hometown. So Tiangong couldn't bear it? 55? You have to take a few more looks to stay there, but Mr. Tian knew it, so it must be a coincidence. There is still a difference between a person's accent, whether it's weird or astringent. The same Yuzhou Mandarin made Yang Su feel awkward to others, but Tian Tsong knew that he was a foreigner from another state as soon as he spoke. There has always been a proverb in the world of Qingming: the sky is not afraid of the earth, but the people of Hongnong County, Yuzhou, are afraid of the official talk. Therefore, there is a joke that when chatting with the Hongnong Yang family's children, they either go in one ear and out the other or simply say nothing. As long as you still want to reply, you have to listen carefully, otherwise you will not understand at all. It was very difficult for Su Shiyuan to talk to Yang Su. I traveled around Yuzhou with my 2 sisters before, and when I passed through Hongnong County, I experienced the power of the people there. For example, the women in the market scolded people both viciously and cleverly, and they liked to scold older men. The old turtle called those idle libertines floating corpses. Another example is to scold yourself instead of your husband. You only need to say, "I will definitely be a widow in the future," which shows your skill. In addition, many ladies from Hongnong County can drink and sing boxing at banquets. Although the woman has a naturally soft voice, her posture is heroic, with her sleeves rolled up and her eyebrows raised, giving her a unique charm. The judges at the same table were listening to the boxing. It was really refreshing to enjoy the beautiful scenery. In fact, this Shang Jiao, whose real name is Su Xian, and especially his 2 sisters, are both great men of virtue. The owner of Qingyi Cave is Su Mian. The co-owner of Heaven and Earth, Su Yingzhu. There are 2 more mountain monks who have become one of the 10 candidates. Su Shiyuan glanced at the mealy women. It was a custom in their hometown that women who were about to get married would wear a feng hua shuiyu with money when they left the palace. It was rumored that the couple's love would last forever. This kind of money has heavy copper quality, beautiful writing and fine appearance. If a rich family builds a house and embeds it in the main beam, the owner will make a fortune. Marriage between aristocratic families, marrying a man and marrying a wife, is really like gambling. Once you buy it, you will leave it without returning it. It's a pity that such a beautiful woman has no intention of marrying her husband and raising children. She just shows her true feelings by this way and is married to Taoism for the rest of her life. When Zhou Xian went out, he made up his mind that all the people in the world were brothers. Since his family was not weak, he would use money to clear the way and exchange real money for sincerity. When a friend borrows money from him, is that called borrowing? It means taking back the money deposited with him. The same goes for friends on the mountain who borrow magic weapons and spiritual books and secrets. In short, Zhou Xian never let the word money be bigger than the word friend. Zhou Xian asked sternly, I dare to ask fellow Taoist Jinxing, why do you want to practice Taoism and become an immortal? Is there such a long-cherished destiny and long-cherished wish that when you accidentally remember it in this life, you have the heart to seek Taoism and the ambition to become an immortal? This situation is common in the mountains. Tiangong has neither a disciple nor a disciple, so he has no Taoist title for the time being. However, similar to the self-title of the deaf Taoist, the Tian Communist Party's Taoist nickname Golden Sound will not be recorded by Yujing. Don't look at Su Ziyuan's casual remarks to Luo Yi. When he first met Yang Su, a proud man of heaven, he was even more generous. After getting acquainted with him a little, Yang Su was guessed, asking, Zhou Xian could do anything. Unconcerned, he smiled and said, no one knows more than his father. On the contrary, when dealing with Tiangong, he always attached great importance to etiquette, took care of him a lot along the way, and often asked for words when he had nothing to say so that Tiangong would not be at a loss and lose his way. Tianzong did not hide anything and said truthfully, in the beginning I was seeking wealth and later I was seeking longevity. Zhou Xian asked curiously, after going through many hardships, I finally became a true immortal. How does Taoist Jinxing feel? Tiangong said with embarrassment, Brother Shangjiao is joking, what kind of am I? I'm already in my 40s and am still at the bottom of my career with no improvement in sight. I'm lucky to have met you and to be able to travel together. Along the way I just feel like it's just a lie. Zhou Xian smiled and said, I would like to ask, is the deaf Taoist your disciple? The territory of the Little Four Prefectures is not small. Bai Yujing's battle to encircle and suppress the alien demons caused a continent to sink into a lake, and the waters were vast. Many casual cultivators and private Taoist priests who could not deal with Bai Yujing liked to operate their influence here. Zhou Xian was no stranger to the customs of Xiaosizu, and he had never heard of any deaf Taoist. Tiangong shook his head and did not want to say anything more. After all, it involves the extremely private Taoist lineage. Zhou Xian did not ask any more questions, changed the subject and asked casually, fellow Taoist Jinxing, how do you view the matter of cultivation? Tiangong thought for a moment and said, to learn Taoism is to read ancient books. Good argument. Zhou Xian nodded and smiled, fellow Taoist Jinxing, if I have the chance, I'll treat you to a goose stewed in an iron pot. Before going up the mountain, Zhou Xian learned through casual conversations that the farmer claimed that he had practiced cultivation in the Immortal family since he was young, but that he had not been able to practice the Dharma. He suffered from the lack of guidance from a master, was deaf in one ear and had injuries to his organs. He then went out, seeking immortality, traveling across mountains and rivers, looking for enlightened people who can cure diseases and guide people to become immortals. Fortunately, there is no end to the road, and he found a cheap practitioner in the market who was playing in the world of mortals. After many tests, the master saw that he was firm in his Taoism, so he led him up the mountain and practiced a genuine immortal method. That's why Zhou Xian guessed that the deaf Taoist was the tutor of the Tianzong who went astray in the past and lost one ear. Zhou Xian once thought that the best candidate to be a disciple was Gao Gu of Huayong Palace. For this reason, he made a special trip to a Taoist temple in Daifishan Mountain and became the resident Taoist priest. He remained anonymous for more than 100 years and learned the 8 classics seriously. Talisman, I started to refine the elixir honestly. It's a pity that Gao Gu has been watching Zhou Xian for several years, but never fell in love with Zhou Xian. Perhaps he didn't want the young man to continue to waste his time, so he took the initiative to show up and persuade him to go down the mountain and find another master. Gao Gu has made his position so clear that Zhou Xian can't help but stay in the Taoist temple, especially since Gao Gu also suggested that he go to Xiaosizu. Only then did Zhou Xian go there, and he actually got to know the old man who raised geese. The Taoist priests learned many techniques from Wang, but they did not have the status of master and disciple. Tian Song only regarded it as a polite word, smiled and nodded in agreement. When a person is in a foreign land, wandering and helpless, he is inevitably lonely. It is an unexpected joy for him to find a friend who meets him. Luo Yi knew the inside story and was helpless. Su Ziyuan's goose stewed in an iron pot. If you can't help it, don't eat it. Zhou Xian laughed from the bottom of his heart and said, "Fellow Taoist Jinxing like me, you all use a pseudonym, right?" Tiangong hesitated for a moment and nodded. Zhou Xian patted Tiangong on the shoulder. "To be honest, my real name is quite famous. Just don't mention it. Making friends requires heart-to-heart communication, not names." Tiangong smiled and said, "My real name is unknown. It doesn't matter whether I say it or not." Zhou Xian held Tiangong's shoulders and lowered his voice. "Then let's talk about it and tell us our real names?" Tian Song just shook his head. Zhou Xian lowered his voice and said, "Actually, my surname is Qin and my first name is Pingon. It's good for you to know. Don't spread it outside." Tiangong was stunned on the spot and looked at this person blankly. I don't know if I was shocked by Shang Jiao's shamelessness, or if I suspected that I had made a mistake and mistook Shang Jiao as the kind of person who could be a friend. It turned out that I was warm and attentive, but they were all other people's joking behavior. Su Mian suddenly stared when he heard this and reminded him in his heart, "Remember not to call Yin Guan by name. Hashtag every time verification appears, please do not use incognito mode." Zhou Xian was frustrated. Huang Zhen patted the back of Su Ziyuan's hand and said with a smile, "Since Taoist friend Shang Jiao has made the secret, I have to be wise. The single name, wood, water, fire and earth are all fake." Zhou Xian let go of his hand and was confused. At this time, a Taoist priest from Huayang Palace came up the mountain and said that the palace master wanted to invite you all. While I was still thinking, my sister Suingjia smiled and helped to answer the question. Wood, water, fire and earth, among the 5 elements, there is still gold missing. Since they are all false, there must be something true. Adding the true character to the radical of the word gold means town. The Taoist nickname of Yu Tiangong also matches. A single name contains the word town. Zhou Xian suddenly realized single name town? So what about the real last name? Su Ying saw that his younger brother was confused and would ignore such obvious clues. Isn't the name of Tian Communist Party the answer? Just when she was about to solve the riddle for him, she looked up and saw the couplets on the plaque of Wanwan Tower and changed her mind. Luo Yi asked, "Why are you so interested in this Tiangong?" Zhou Xian joked, "Why do you think our Tiansong brothers have ordinary qualifications, smell of earthiness and can't stand the Derma's eyes? You are a mud-legged person who looks down on mud-legged people." Luo Yi laughed dumbly. Scholars all like to tell lies. As the founding emperor of the largest dynasty in a state, Luo Yi is only good at making scholars cut off their heads one by one. In fact, Luo Yi came from a very low background. He rose from a small soldier in the border army to his current high position step by step. Naturally, he would not look down on him just because he saw that the Tian Communist Party was not from a wealthy family. Besides, what does a wealthy family mean? Think back to that year when Qian Kuan decided to launch the founding of the People's Republic of China. When his soldiers and horses entered the old capital, several streets were filled with blood, all from the mansions of the yellow and purple princes. The flow out will make the horses' hooves slip. At that time there were conspirators around me who advised me that this move was inappropriate. Ignore it? If you kill too many people, you will easily lose people's hearts. It will not look good in the history books of future generations. Luo Yi sat high on the horse with a calm expression and just replied, "I have to take care of it, the knife is too slow." Zhou Xian said quietly, "My 2 sisters are famous for their high vision and accurate judgment of people. I won't mention what they think of Brother Wuxi. I'm just talking about you." Glancing at Su Mian, the stoic man hummed and remained silent for a moment. "If you don't speak the same language as one family, you will call me brother-in-law from now on." Wuxi did not proclaim himself emperor like Luo Yi, but he was recognized as the supreme emperor by the entire Peizhou. As a result, on the border of Yongzhou, Zhou Xian, the empress of the Yufu dynasty, seemed to have lost her mind and went crazy. She acted arbitrarily and built the universal Jiao divination of the four states. Peizhou happens to be one of them. As a result, it was naturally impossible for Wuxi to accompany his two sworn brothers on a trip. Especially the destination is Huayang Palace. If Wuxi dares to show up at Difei Mountain at this time, it is estimated that in the eyes of Baiyujing Taoist officials, it will be the same as that of a rebellion. In the early years after learning that Lizhu Cave had fallen from the sky and was consecrated as a blessed place, the ambitious Wuxi had always wanted to find an opportunity to travel around the world and invite the true Dragon King Zhu to Qingming World. When they reached the top of the mountain, Xian of Zhiwei Palace and the south wall of Damu Temple had been waiting for a long time. Palace Master Mao Jue was not waiting at the door. Indeed, even if the head of the Hongnong Yang family arrived, he might not be able to treat Mao Jue, who has a double clone, well. Xian led them into the courtyard of Palace Master Mao. There was a main room with an 8 Immortals table and 4 wooden stools. They were all made from nearby materials and chopped by Mao Jue himself. The main room had neither a plaque nor a shrine. The rooms on both sides, everywhere is Mao Jue's residence and the other is a study room. There are no doors, so you can have an unobstructed view of the scenery inside the house. Those descendants of the Yang family from Hongnong who were born in Huazhou were very curious. It was probably the first time for them to see this kind of humble house as mentioned in the book, a common people's house. Yang Huang casually found an excuse and ran alone to the Guanyu pavilion on the other side of the deep pool. Seeing no one around, the boy became playful. Suddenly, a golden rooster stood alone, put his fingers together, widened his eyes and muttered something. Hey, snakes in the North River, dragons in the West Lake, fish in the Southern Ocean and carps in the East China Sea, don't take a quick look at them. Don't underestimate them. How can the gods be things in the pond? They will turn into dragons when encountering wind and clouds. Yang Huang found that the deaf Taoist and Na Tian were not sitting there, so they also came here for a walk. The young man lost interest and went to Huayang Palace to learn more from Master Mao. After entering the yard and crossing the threshold of the main room, I saw that my sister had already picked up the power fence. Wow, it was so beautiful. Yang Huang smiled brightly and asked directly, Palace Master Mao, can I go in and take a look at the study? Mao Jue said, whatever. Without waiting for Yang Jing to stop him, the young man had already hurried to the study room, staring at the several documents from the study room on the table. His eyes stopped on an inkstone with ink left on it and he murmured to himself, this kind of bricks and tiles, I know that the inkstone has its own uniqueness, but no matter how I look at it, I can't tell that it's any good. Of course this phrase means something. Since you, Mao Jue, can be favored by Gaogu, your Taoism is of course superb. But forgive me for my blindness, I can't see your extraordinary uniqueness. The woman wearing a power fence reprimanded him in her heart not to be rude. If he dared to say another word, he would immediately go down the mountain. At the same time she smiled softly and said, when a young man appreciates inkstones, he only looks at their beauty and does not care about their ugliness. In the final analysis, still not enough experience and accumulation. Yang Huang quickly clasped his fists towards the main room and begged for mercy. Good sister, stop scolding me. I finally climbed over the wall and sneaked out. I have been scolded countless times and I am full of scolds. Probably because he was a member of the noble family, he couldn't hide his arrogance. Even though he got Yang Jing's gift, he still didn't say hello to the owner. He picked up the square inkstone on the table without permission and read the contents of the inkstone at will. The sword light suddenly rises, awakening Li Long, who is trapped in the mud pond, and has been sleeping for a long time. The rivers and lakes are wet with foam, the night is long and the water is cold and the pearls on the chin are like lamps. The wind and thunder force him and his scales and beards spread out. In the darkroom for thousands of years, my soul is ruthless. A single point makes it clear and everything in the sky and the earth is illuminated. Not to mention Xian, who was the most disciplined person, felt that the boy was rude. Even Nan Chong, who was already informal enough, couldn't help but frown. Do you really regard Huayang Palace as your own home? On the contrary, Mao Jue still had Gu Jing's unwavering attitude. In the past, I set up a stall outside Zuxiguan to rent comic books. After I closed the stall, I found that the comic books were full of fingerprints and even snot. Yang Jing stood up, went to the study, grabbed the young man's ears and pushed him down on the bench. Previously, Mao Jue stood at the door watching the guests filing in. The first sight of Master Bai Gu fell on the maid behind the mealy woman. How brave you are to come to Defei Mountain. Mao Jue looked at the escaped young man at this moment, the real master. In Guanyu Pavilion, the old man seemed to be able to isolate himself from the world by the water without the need for words. He was confident that he could hide it from the old man with white bones. He smiled and said, "Too many words lead to mistakes. You shouldn't mention your name to Xianxia. It's just one thing. His family has a big business and he can't afford to lose anything if he makes a mistake. Can you? Of course you can't. If you make one wrong move, you will suffer a fate of eternal disaster. It's the same as entrusting you to my care, not for you to make mistakes. If you are a dumb person, you will know your own suffering. Be careful when you go out and learn more from the Yingguan of similar age. One who can turn a gloomy life into magnificence is a hero." Sword of Coming Chapter 1153. Lu Shi glanced at the sacred road that went up the mountain like it reached the sky and said with a smile, "Wei Shenjun, Master Lu, you continue to talk about your business and we will just drink our tea." Lu Shen looked a little embarrassed and Qin Pingon was not in the mountains, so there was no point in talking to Wei Bo. "When I came out this time I mentioned Ma Kexuan's direct biography, which was just to sell it to Luo Luoshan at a low price, and there was nothing more serious to talk about. What's more, Lu Shen didn't even want to see Jing Juzhong, let alone talking to him at the same table. It would be a waste of energy. As for Lu Shi, when Lu Shen was young he had to participate in an ancient sacrificial ceremony held by the abbot of the Lu family every year. He also played the role of a Xinga Taoist priest who went to the altar several times to recite congratulations, and the main priest who held the incense. The name taboo written is the true name of Lu Shi. Lu Fang seemed to be unwilling to let Lu Shen go just like that. He had a family background of reading and a good way of studying. He committed crimes during the day, blocked roads and robbed people and killed people in back alleys. It is better than being a Buddha during the day or a ghost at night. Just like a landlord beating a tenant farmer in front of his face, the situation was beyond his control, so Lu Shen had no choice but to sit down after hearing this. Lu Shi and Jing Juzhong, when they appeared together, whoever saw them would be stunned. Qin Lingjun was confused when he heard this and glanced at Wei Yeo. He was indeed a good brother from Piyun Mountain, and he was as lost in the clouds as himself. Wei Bo was surprised as to why Lu Shi and Jing Juzhong appeared together. He was even more curious about their trip. Is there any priority between the two parties? What did they want to ask for advice from Lu Shen? When she heard that the distinguished guests wanted to drink tea, Xiao merely asked them to wait a moment, then went to boil water. Taoist priest Xianwei also went to get the wild tea picked and roasted by the old cook himself. A table was placed at the foot of the mountain, and Lu Shi naturally sat on the main seat with his back to Lulu Mountain. The owner of the mountain was not at home, so Wei Bo acted as the host. Jing Juzhong sat opposite Wei Bo. Lu Shen then sat with Lu Shi, who was sitting north and facing south. "On the contrary, I would like to accompany you to the last seat." The boy in green had just accepted a cheap relative and had been promoted a generation in vain. At the moment he was busy grinning silly and cheerfully, and was not aware of the undercurrent at this table. Wei Bo and Lu Shen looked at each other with disgust, but they treated a being like Lu Shi, a high-ranking mountain and a yin-yang family who investigated the 5 elements of heaven, with far more courtesy than ordinary monks. Seeing Lu Shi, who was born from the manifestation of vast heaven and earth, was a rare seeing the way. It was like a businessman complaining that he had never seen big money in his life and then he saw Lu Jubao alive. Lu Fan was beside him. Although Wei Bo was a little reserved, he was not as silent as a cicada. Since Lu Fan was interested in listening, Wei Bo was happy to help Qin Pingon, Luo Luoshan and Lu Fan gain some momentum. Wei Bo let out a laugh. Continuing the previous topic, Qi. What is Yi Qi? The word Qi means rugged mountains and rocks, barren and rough, sparse vegetation and lack of vitality. According to the saying on the mountain, it is an empty mountain, similar to straight water. According to the common principles of feng shui, Luopa mountain is large and empty, so it is not easy to gather qi, so it is not suitable to be opened as a Taoist temple. Either an empty mountain consumes the spirit of the practitioner, or the Taoist needs to bring many foreign objects and rare treasures to fill the hole in the feng shui. In short, it is easy for the trainer and the dojo to conflict. In this case, what is the use of buying such a dojo? Lu Xian said, on the surface this mountain is really useless, so it is not in the eyes of ordinary Qi practitioners. However, in the long run, it is consistent with Qin Pingan's fate. Wei Bo sneered and said, Lu Wei is an immortal after all, why not take Luopa Mountain to safety first? Taking a step back, the Lu family has the advantage of first move, so they should cast a wide net, let alone Luopa Mountain. If we include Tiandu Peak, Tiaoyu Mountain and Fuyao foothills in a line in the south, what's the problem? Please enlighten me. At that time, the empress of the Great Li dynasty Nanhan, whose real name was Lu Jiang, had not yet become the abandoned son of the Lu family in China. She was extremely powerful in the court. At least half of the spies were under her control. At that time, everyone would think that they belonged to the late emperor. A kind of check and balance technique. Xiuhu manages the government, vassal King Song Chongjing is in charge of the border army, and Nanhao handles intelligence. Among the three they will mix sand with each other, plus those with surnames from Shangzhou Kingdom. In short, no one is allowed when one party becomes more powerful. It has the opportunity to arbitrarily determine the direction of the government and exercise dictatorship. History can explain 99 of 100 things, but there is always one thing that creates new history for future generations to learn from. Lu Xian shook his head, I can't do it. I have enough will but not enough strength. Lu Feng smiled and explained on his behalf. Lu Wei was once severely punished by Mr. Qi. He was wronged and felt guilty, so he did not dare to stretch his hand too far. When Xiuhu takes over this place, Mr. Lu will want to do something. For example, if Lu Xian wants to use Tiandu Peak as a place to stay and start again, he must first ask Xiuhu about his intention. If yes, he can land on Aquarius continent. If not, he must fight. Go back home and look for another opportunity. Qin Lingjun was stunned when he heard this. How could that embroidered tiger act so domineeringly? I remember the last time we met it was quite easy to talk. Could it be that when the imperial master saw that he had extraordinary abilities, he favored him and gave him special treatment? Zheng Juzhong didn't seem interested in the conversation and just looked at the table. In fact, on the country road earlier, Zheng Juzhong did not intercept Zhou Xianxia's inner thoughts. He only briefly explained a few words to Wei Bo, to the effect that Lu Xi wanted to visit Qin Pingan's school. Of course Wei Bo could trust Zheng. The problem is that even if he can't believe it, what can he do? Wei Bo can only wait until Qin Pingan returns before mentioning the matter again, giving Qin Pingan a headache. Lu Xi glanced at Lu Xian. It's true that you can't do it, but it's an irony to have more than enough will but not enough strength. It's true to have more than enough strength but not enough confidence. I guess Cui Chan walked up to Tiandu Peak to find you. Cui Chan must have known it for a long time and you didn't dare to gamble. For example, Cui Chan would deliberately persuade you to let Lu make a big bet on Aquarius Island, so you really don't want him to help you deal with Zhou Zi? I dare to bet. I can only help Cui Zhan keep an eye on Qin Shan's travels, including Beipingzu, Chuhai Jianqi Great Wall, Tongyi's Hao, Shujian Lake, Beiju Luzhou. Just like the new leader who replaced Lin Jingqing, Cui Chan and the Great Li Court can use a master of the Yinyang family who has reached the Ascended Realm for free without paying a salary. Lu Xian will only pay more attention to every contact between Zhou Zi and Qin Pingan. Lu Xian remained silent. At this table today, it is easy to say too much and make many mistakes. Wei Bo sighed in his heart. If Lu Xian had dared to gamble back then, and with the help of the Lu family in China, the two battles at Laolong City in the south of Aquarius continent and Dali capital in the central part would have only made the wilderness more painful? The reason why Lu Xian didn't nod was of course because he didn't think Xiuhu had the strength to compete with Zhou Zi. It was absolutely impossible. Lu Xian was extremely certain of one thing at that time. Yutui hashtag every time verification appears, please do not use incognito mode. No matter how powerful Zhan is, the 200-year-old Dao Ling is right there, and there is no way he is qualified to be on an equal footing with Zhou Zi. Anyway, he had already taken his seat, so he was content with what he had come. Lu Xian, while guessing what Zheng Juzhong really wanted during his trip, asked, when Master Qin went south, was it because of his own heart or because of the guidance of an expert? Wei Bo shook his head and said, Qin Pingan never mentioned this matter. Lu Xian didn't ask Wei Bo at first, he just hoped that Lu Xi would say more about this matter. When Luopa Mountain was founded, although Qin Pingan obtained the land deed from the Dali court, It was indeed not suitable to live in the mountain for a long time, as it would easily strip away the vitality. Just because that was when Qin Pingon was at his most turbulent and weak. Since the water and soil in the mountain could not support people for the time being, he would not be able to support the mountain and would only hurt each other. So the best choice is to leave Lolu Mountain temporarily. Most people think that the young man's trip to see Ning Yao at the Sword Qi Great Wall was the only reason why he sent the sword. Lu Xun could naturally see a deeper level, and there must have been an expert's guidance to make Qin Pingon leave the town in such a hurry. Qin Lingjun's expression moved slightly. Wei Ba's eyes suddenly became sharp. Qin Lingjun felt extremely wronged. Wei Yao, I'm not a fool, can I tell outsiders about this kind of family matter? In fact, Qin Pingan's trip south was indeed very particular. Old man Yang from the medicine shop came forward in person and asked Li Shixing, who had gone to Lolu Mountain, to help with a fortune-telling, and he came to the saying that the road goes straight and the benefits lie in the south. Note 1, Chapter 192, The writing is like a god. Lu Qi sighed. 10,000 years have passed and 10,000 years have passed and a new book has appeared in the world. How to date the era and define the beginning is a great question of scholarship in Taoism. Just speaking of my opinions on this matter, you Mr. Lu and Mr. Yunlin Jiang are not considered hindsight, although it is still somewhat suspected of being an accident. The first hexagram in the human world, which is known as the first of all scriptures, is the Qian hexagram. Lu Xun, what do you have in mind about this? The dignified head of the Lu family was just like Meng Tong, who was asked a question in the school examination by his master. Lu Xun did not dare to take it lightly, carefully crafted his words and said slowly, the host and the guest are evenly matched. There are 4 kinds of manifestations and concealments. First, in the entire human world, only within the Lizhu cave, the ancient Shinto and the current Tao, is a kind of hidden, even inverted host-guest relationship. In contrast, the town is the place where the true dragon fell, and it is an inversion of the 3 religions in the outside world. They had to use 4 heavy treasures to suppress the true dragon energy. Secondly, the future Lord Qin Shan and Lord Dong Haihai formed a contract at that time. Thirdly, someone on the table was hidden from everyone else. It's obvious. No one knew who this someone was at the time. I'm afraid even the person setting the table at the drugstore didn't know who it was. In the past, there was an iron lock well in the town, which was used to imprison the evil dragon. It snowed heavily at night and the trapped dragon finally found water. She secretly formed an equal contract with Qin Pingon in Mubwa Alley, and ostensibly became Song Jisen's maid. Wang Zhu not only used the luck of Song Jisen, the son of the dragon, as food, but Jigui also cut through a wall to steal and eat away at the luck of Qin Pingon next door. Whether it is annotating scriptures or interpreting hexagrams, Qi Jingchun is the first person to truly explore the secrets of heaven, but the price he needs to pay for it is indeed a bit high. Teacher Lu's solution is to be a disciple of heaven. It can be regarded as second. Cui Chan doesn't care about people, he only cares about things. He is responsible for finishing the chessboard. The last place becomes the first place in a different way. Lu Feng, who had been patiently listening to Lu Xun's exegesis, smiled and said, is this the only high opinion the Lu family has? Xing Juzhong finally spoke and added, it's still an open book test. Seeing that Lu Xun was so exhausted, Wei Ba's depressed mood was somewhat relieved. However, the boy in green hurriedly winked at Xing Juzhong and reminded Xing Shi's nephew, in his heart, that the guy's surname is Lu. If he is an expert of the Lu family in China, don't be quick to talk and be resented by him. You also advise your friends around you who like to talk big words to scare people, just say your big words well. Don't be like Mr. Wei Shanjun, who always carries a gun and a stick making insinuations and just criticizes the master of the Lu family if something goes wrong. If this master of the Lu family is really related to the master of the Lu family, who was ranked very high in the collection of passers-by, I can't protect that friend of yours. Xing Juzhong laughed in his heart and said, it can't be such a coincidence, right? The person named Xing is Xing Juzhong, and the person named Lu is related to the Lu family in Zhongtu? Qin Lingjun became anxious and responded with sincere words, nephew, you don't know something. I and people named Lu have never gotten along well, so don't let me get involved. To be honest, there was a very unscrupulous man named Lu before. The Taoist priest came to the mountain. Forget it, you are not a hero if you speak ill of people behind their backs. That guy is still very powerful, but I don't like it, so it doesn't hinder his greatness. As for who he is, what his name is, just go with his identity. Yes, the way is up to the sky, guess it. Anyway, please advise your friend, don't save face for me, you might as well tell him directly, just say that I, Qin Lingjun, and the man named Lu have some mysterious fate to conflict with each other, so tell your friend to take it easy, and you are not talking to others when you are away from home. Why bother to decide the winner with words? There is no winner in any quarrel in the world. Zheng Juzhong said, I told my friend about it, but he didn't seem to appreciate it. He replied saying that my uncle who is a senior is too timid. Qin Lingjun stared. Lu Fang was helpless. Of course he would not speak like this. Mr. Zheng, are you addicted to pretending to be a nephew? Regarding the matter of fortune-telling, Qin Lingjun was with Zheng Dafeng and Xianwei, and listened to some of their conversations. The general idea is that a gentleman does not need to tell fortunes. All you need to do is have a clear conscience, cultivate your virtues and accumulate Taoist power. Just like those who worship sages in the Confucian temple and ask for advice from the most holy teachers. They always ask about benevolence but never ask about it. It's just that there is no need to ask more about Tao. The road is not far away from people and they will never leave you for a moment. With profound knowledge and cultivation, you will naturally be able to know destiny. As they chatted, Qin Lingjun was a little impressed with them, and soon began to show his true colors. Zheng Dafeng stretched out his palm and asked Xianwei, you are a Taoist priest who has set up a stall to tell fortunes for many years. I want to help my brother read his palm to see what his future marriage will be like and whether he will have good luck in love in the near future. If we don't talk about the death of the chief waterlog that week, we can't die of drought. Lu Xun hesitated again and again, but still asked Zheng Juzhong from the bottom of his heart, I dare to ask Mr. Zheng what will happen this time? Waiting for a rabbit, what do you want? Any mountaintop monk with profound spiritual power is not tireless, cautious, and seeking his own path? 55. Wei Shi from Aizu and Huolong Zhenren from Luzhou in Beiju failed to join the Tao twice. There are also the god of wealth Lu Jubao and the businessman Mr. Fan, both of whom seek enlightenment on the word money. There is also the great Ascension Realm demon of Middle-earth who was killed by Bai Yi when he left the dojo with his sword. How difficult it was to deal with. The dojo is bordered by the underworld. If it hadn't tried every possible means to seek the way but was hopeless, how could it have been unstable and tried to make a desperate move? The act of pulling out the house, in the hope that it would be a rebellion against the Tao, would disturb the world of the underworld, and the borders of more than 10 countries would be blurred, and it would also lead to the calamity of weapons and swords. Note 2, Chapter 4:15. The most proud in the world. Lu Xun's seemingly understated, extreme pain, can be said to express the feelings of the monks on the mountain. Of course, Lu Xun was afraid that there would be Zhou Zi blocking the way and Zheng Juzhong blocking the way. Zheng Juzhong gave the answer straightforwardly, borrowing books to kill people. Lu Xun could not help but wonder, what book should I borrow? Kill whom? The young Taoist priest and the little girl in black always cooperated tacitly, fetching water and making tea with a clear division of labor. They walked quickly on the way to the house. Xianwei sighed for no reason. That Tianbian Taoist priest must be an expert. Xiamili asked curiously, why? The Xianwei hesitated for a moment and said in his heart, there is no trace of humanity in him. Xiaomili suddenly said, I know that if you are successful in practicing Taoism, you will not touch the world of mortals and you will have a fairy spirit. This is what the books say. Xianwei and Xiamili looked at each other with a clear understanding of each other, and laughed loudly at the same time. We are not good at it, very bad at it. We don't have the demeanor of gods and we are missing a lot of meaning. Entering the room, Xianwei let out a sigh. Several tin cans were empty and there were no tea leaves. Zheng Dafeng came here at some unknown time and leaned against the door. There was number 300 taels of silver in this place. He gave a lame excuse. Could it be that he was attacked by a thief? If you don't steal gold, silver and tea, you are a thief of elegance. Xianwei was a little embarrassed. Zheng Dafeng patted his head and said, I remember, Grandmaster Wen made himself a cup of tea when he had something to do recently, and he was full of praise for the tea. Xiaomili said, don't panic, I will go to Sister Nuanshu Jianghu to help. Zheng Dafeng smiled lazily and said, the Immortal Lieutenant can just bring out the best tea ready-made in the house. There is no need to be too serious and mobilize the troops, but it will appear that we are flattering. The passing woodcutter can drink it, but the immortal master who is here as a guest cannot drink it. No such a road. Xiaomili glanced at Xianwei, who nodded. As expected, it was Brother Dafeng who decided, that's it. While Xiaomili ran to boil the water, Xianwei asked curiously, Brother Dafeng, that fellow Daoist Lu, can't he be the Lu from the Lu family in Middle-earth? After all, Taoist Master Xianwei is not that little fool like Qin Lingjun. Zheng Dafeng nodded and said with a smile, Tianbian God, with such a big Taoist name and such a big name, it is reasonable to have a bigger surname so that it can be suppressed. Not only does Lu Xian have the surname Lu, he also controls the entire family and everyone with the surname Lu. Well, the ones hanging on the wall don't count. After all, Lu Xian has not yet reached the 14th level. Moreover, even if he becomes one day, he still seems to have no control over them. Our Mr. Lu who sets up a fortune teller. That is to say, Xianwei came a little late. Otherwise Zheng Dafeng would have dragged him to give Lu Qian his head every day, and this kind of excitement would have been in vain. The head of the Lu family is in the Ascension realm. The Xianwei clicked his tongue in surprise. I've met a big shot. Zheng Dafeng said with a smile. We are meeting a big shot. Xianwei said with emotion. I have gained a lot of experience by settling down here. Zheng Dafeng rubbed his chin, raised his head to look at the sky and said with a smile. The sky sends murderous intentions and dragons and snakes rise from the ground. People send murderous intentions and the world turns upside down. The Xianwei waited patiently for the millet grains to boil the water and said casually, I think the storm will come from the sky and a gentleman will respect it. Dragons and snakes rise from the land, heroes emerge in large numbers and there is full of vitality. Zheng Dafeng crossed his arms across his chest, lowered his eyes and looked at the yard. You are right, I want to lend you some good words. I am just a martial artist who uses fists and kicks, but you are a serious Taoist. You always talk. More reliable than me. The spread of the Taoism of the founders of the three religions is like a return to the world for the entire human world, and Luo Luo Mountain will be no exception. The Xianwei laughed it off. Brother Dafeng always likes to say weird things that don't make sense. He is so thin-skinned that he is too embarrassed to accept it calmly. Zheng Dafeng sighed. Logically speaking, the Lu family in China originally had the opportunity to cooperate with Luo Luoshan. I'm afraid that it's obviously a good thing that can benefit each other, but the person who actually handles it is a mediocre person who fails more than succeeds and likes to be smart. Wu Shou from Baofengzai, Tui Chan from Aquarius Continent, and Qin Pingon from Tongye Continent all encountered obstacles. It was the founder Zhang Ji who personally showed up to mediate and sorted out the mess. Lu Wei, who had been planning in Liju Cave for a long time, was in a similar situation to the Lu family of the Yin-Yang family, or the family leader Lu Xian. Lu Xian will either make up for the situation or continue to do so. When God dozes off. Some visitors never knock on the door in the cold winter, while others know how to stop and wait outside the door. Yunlin Jiang's family is very stable. Even if she notices changes in the heavenly secrets, she still has the patience to endure and does not dare to act rashly. At most they just beat around the bush and ask Jiang Yun, a concubine, to come here to seek opportunities and take the opportunity to explore the depths. He would never bet all his wealth and life on this. What's more, a screen was set up and Lu Laoqing moved out Shujian Lake to prevent disasters. In any case, Aquarius Continent's first 5-level wild cultivator in the past 1,000 years must be blessed with good fortune. The master-disciple relationship between Lu Laoqing and Jiang Yun is like the screen wall at the family house at the foot of the mountain, which can replace Yunlin Jiang family blocks evil spirits. Although in the Dali Palace, Lu Wei had proposed cooperation with Qin Pingon. But Lu Wei's proposal at that time seemed too insincere, and he simply treated Qin Pingon as a fool. Qin Pingon revealed the secret and exposed the Lu family's plan. Through the Earth Mirror chapter, he selected a hilltop corresponding to Lulu Mountain to survey the latitude and longitude veins of the 3 Yuans and 9 Lux, the Liuja talisman and so on. It can not only survey geography, but also observe celestial phenomena. Maybe this is Lu Xian's fault. Every time verification appears, please do not use incognito mode. The method of the Bureau attempts to break the invisible barriers set by Zhou Zi, law the sky and the earth, and finally merge into the 14th realm of Tao. Previously, Jing Qingjia came to Luopa Mountain to find Xiaoma to acknowledge her ancestors and return to the clan. Zheng Dafeng had answered her humbly, asking some questions, But the latter had little knowledge after all and did not hear the implication of Jing Dafeng's words, and she could not take the opportunity to deduce more details. Lots of amazing inside information. For example, 3 souls and 7 souls are linked to life and death. When a person is alive in the world, his soul is unified and his body and soul are in harmony. Therefore, after death, the soul ascends to heaven and the soul body falls to the ground, each in its own place. Therefore, a series of sacrificial rituals and incense rituals were derived. The gods in temples and the souls in tombs were prayed for, and they were worshipped and received incense respectively. In the ancient site of the heavenly palace, the god's throne has existed forever. For thousands of years, it has never lacked its throne due to the collapse of the heavenly way. Old Man Yang, or the Qingtong Tianjun, one of the 12 high-ranking gods, holds an ascension platform in his hand to hide the sky from the sky. The place where the real dragon fell is also used to confuse the sky, and even the old sword hanging at the bottom of the bridge, it is still a blindfold. The truth that Old Man Yang really wants to hide is to restore the divine way and create half a person in the world. He, or she, will eventually take over the lonely mountain in the west, and eventually compete with that high mountain. The ruins of the ancient heaven have been hanging for countless thousands of years, and the sky and the earth echo each other from afar. That's why Old Man Yang asked Chen Pingon why he chose that bird-free mountain. After a moment of silence, Jing Dafeng suddenly asked, Xianwei, every time you close your book in the dead of night, think alone and look back on your life, do you occasionally feel that Luo Xianxian has bad intentions, but in fact he treats you as a piece of jewelry to be sold? Baby. The young Taoist priest was full of energy, speaking completely from his heart, and blurted out, I can't get what I asked for. He never expected such an answer. Jing Dafeng was so confused that he couldn't help but ask, why? The Xianwei laughed endlessly and raised his chin towards Luo Shan Shao Air Bao Shen, who had been pricking up his ears. He signaled to our brother Dafeng that he was really enlightened. Xiaomi Li, please help answer the questions. Xiaomi Li chatted with Taoist Master Xianwei for a long time, and he understood the gatekeeper's thinking best. You must first be a valuable treasure before people can wait for it to be sold. The truth is simple and easy to understand. Xianwei gave a thumbs up to Xiaomi Li and said with a smile, and I believe you. Jing Dafeng asked, don't you believe Chen Pingon? Xianwei Saran said, I don't fully believe how kind the mountain master is to me. I have been in the world for many years, and it really makes people dare not trust anyone easily. Takes time to see the truth. But after so many years, the mountain master, I see how I treat you and how you treat the mountain master. Since I know it in my heart, there is nothing to worry about. Just sleep hard, watch the door diligently, earn money as you should, and practice Taoism seriously. Jing Dafeng smiled and said, have you become accustomed to being hungry or afraid of poverty? You will be afraid that you won't know the truth until you are old. It turns out that you have been living a miserable life with that Saga all your life. Not to mention the old porcelain that was broken and thrown into the old porcelain. Some of the porcelain from the mountains went to the houses of emperors, princes, generals and ministers, and they were always used in the palaces. What's more, even the fragments of the old porcelain mountains were a good foundation for imperial kills. The Xianwei stopped talking. Jing Dafeng asked, do you have a different opinion? The Xianwei chuckled softly and said, I always feel that the world is a Saga and all of us are Sagars. As for the so-called exquisite porcelain, it can make people's hearts be kind, and their eyes are full of green mountains and green waters. Can be a child's carefreeness. The old man dies and the lover finally gets married. Jing Dafeng didn't know how to refute for a while. Xiaomi Li said confusedly, that immortal chief was born in the Lu family of Middle-earth? That's the most famous surname in the world. Or is he the head of the family? He doesn't look very rich and powerful, he's quite kind. Jing Dafeng came back to his senses and said lazily, if you change the place, look at the aura of Lu Shen, he can scare people to death. In other words, in our Lulu mountain, everyone is strong, so we don't care about this. Captain Xian felt a little regretful and said softly, if I had known his identity earlier, I would not have reported the number. The other side of the table didn't bother to express their feelings. Jing Dafeng heard it clearly and said casually, I heard there is a metaphor that the Lu family in China is the Confucian temple and the imperial prison of the world. The Jiang family of Yunlin, who moved from the divine continent of the Middle Earth to the Aquarius continent, once held the position of hereditary Confucian great blessing in their family. The ancestor of the Lu family of the Middle Earth was Taibu, who was also one of the 6 officials of the ancient Confucian temple. To use an inappropriate analogy, the Yunlin Jiang family's Dezhu specializes in saying good things to God, while the Lu family's Taizhu is responsible for trying to figure out the meaning, interpretation, and paraphrase of God's every word. Hearing this, Xiao Mili asked doubtfully, "Can God speak? What's the accent?" Jing Dafeng rubbed his chin. Xiao Mili's question was much more difficult to answer than Fairy Qingjia's previous question. The Xianwei couldn't help laughing and explained casually, "Thunder and rain, wind and water are all God talking to the world." Xiao Mili's eyes lit up and he nodded. "It will be easier to understand with this explanation." Jing Dafeng was a little helpless. No wonder the two of them could talk together best. The Xianwei asked tentatively, "Brother Dafeng, could it be that I am really a wizard in Taoism? It is because our mountain master has a unique vision, so he values them so much. It's fine if you can't catch a young man who everyone envies. It's okay if you can settle for the next best thing, play it safe and make a late bloomer." The Xianwei suddenly became excited and stretched out his palm. "Brother Dafeng always said that he is proficient in palmistry and is no better than the scammers like Pindao. Let me take a closer look. Does Pindao have the qualifications to found a sect?" Jing Dafeng put away his thoughts and squinted. "Why, you have already planned to leave Lolu Mountain, form a clique and set up your own business? It's better. It's better to choose the day than to hit it and choose Lu Shen's Tiandu Peak. I think it's more appropriate." The Xianwei panicked, his face flushed and he was so ashamed. "How can you not? I'm just asking if you have the qualifications to be an Earth Immortal and want to know if you can succeed. It's the best, but it doesn't matter if you don't. Brother Dafeng, don't get me wrong. Xianwei is self-aware, but he is not the material that can establish a sect. He only talks about cultivation and turns over and over in those Taoist books, but he always recognizes the words but does not recognize him." Jing Dafeng changed the topic and said for no reason, "Master Xianwei, are you interested in editing a book by yourself?" The Taoist priest laughed and said, "It is better to borrow a book than to buy a book, and it is better to read a book than to write a book." Sword of Coming Chapter 1154. The young Taoist priest and the little girl in black brought tea. They didn't take up a seat and went to sit on the bamboo chairs. Lu Xian thanked them, drank the hot tea, blew on it and took a sip. The surface of the tea bowl looked like a small mirror. If astronomy is a wordless book left by the gods to the human world, then the water that is slightly rippling in the bowl on the table at this moment is just like the traces of human affairs in the world. Lu Xian was worried. Borrowing a book? I'm afraid that Jing Juzhong was deliberately vague, but in fact he came here to borrow fate and borrow the way. Borrowing my books, coming to kill my people and steal my teachings? Nowadays, among the desolate mountains, isn't there a person who likes to borrow Taoist names from fellow Taoists? Bai Jing possesses more than 30 completely cut-off incense channels. How did he come to be? Lu Xian had to admit that there was no chance of winning against Jing Juzhong in a battle of wits, courage and strength. For the time being, there are still many monks who have not noticed a certain terrible truth. Nowadays in the world, or simply the entire world, the only person who can restrain Jing Juzhong is the Lixing, who must stay outside the sky. Also like Yudo? Wild and spectacular? So Lu Xian's only support at the moment is that Jing Juzhong is too inhuman, and every move he makes will be watched by the Confucian temple? Jing Juzhong said directly, "Don't think too much, it's just the literal meaning. I want to borrow the earth mirror from you." Lu Xian asked in confusion. Mr. Zheng is a scholar of heaven and man, but he is also interested in this book? What's more, if Jing Juzhong really wanted to read this book with his cultivation level and the Lu family's magic ban, could he stop him? Even if Lu Xian knew that the forbidden area was being robbed, he would probably turn a blind eye and let Jing Juzhong quietly read the book. Jing Juzhong picked up the tea bowl and took a sip of tea, then squinted at Lu Xian. "You really think I don't know? There are 3 volumes of Earth Mirror? The original version of the Earth Mirror chapter of the Lu family can be read by the direct disciples of the Lu family who have verified their aptitude and Taoist heart. After being perfected by Lu Xian, it has been supplemented and has many personal annotations. Only some ancestors and meritorious deeds are qualified to read the second book, and Lu Xian himself is the third book. Jing Juzhong has long been familiar with all the contents of the first 2 local mirror chapters. Lu Wei and others' understanding and attainment of the local mirror chapters are definitely not as good as Jing Juzhong, an outsider. They meet on the road and it is hard to say who will give guidance to whom. Lu Xian took a deep breath. Lu Fang knew one thing. Zhou Zi had indeed stayed in Gongda for a period of time. The Confucian temple opened a door specifically for him, and Zhou Zi was able to gradually master the knowledge of yin and yang and the five elements. A large book known as the first of the group of scriptures. It also has two auxiliary scriptures such as Wing. One part was placed in Linlin Terrace of Gongda and preserved by Jingsheng Shiping. One part is collected by Mr. Lu in the Zhilan department on Tiantai. As the legitimate head of the family, Lu Xian was able to continue the path of his predecessors and study this book. His Taoism was profound, and he eventually derived a branch of knowledge in the Earth Mirror chapter. This book starts with the Zhen hexagram. The changes in heaven and earth and the physiology of life are like a mountain all in their ins and outs. Tiandu Peak faces Lulu Mountain. The Golden Summit Temple in the northern part of Tonggishao corresponds to the Qingping sword sect of Luo Xianxia sect. For thousands of years, Zhou Zitian and the Lu family have each occupied half of the Yin and Yang family. At the beginning of his enlightenment and ascension, Lu Xian was full of ambition and his heart was higher than the sky. After his Tao heart hit the wall, he still did not lose heart completely. He thought about the yin and yang and the five elements. The road is so grand and wide even if you Zhou Zi refuse to give way. There is no perfect road for everyone. I Lu Xian will take a detour. I will not fight with you about the single plank bridge. I will find another road. There should always be a chance to join the road. So the Lu family has the Earth Mirror chapter. Since the weather is not as good as the right place and the right place is not as good as the harmony of people, people will definitely win over nature. And since it is named the Earth Mirror chapter, the key point is naturally between ground and mirror. The so-called Earth Mirror is a reflection of the accumulated water on the earth, where one can observe people and oneself. A bowl of water on the table can be a mirror, and of course the nearby Hong Kim Lake is. I have to admit that it was in the hands of Lu Xian that the Earth Mirror chapter was pushed to a new level. The book that Jing Juzhong wanted to borrow from Lu Xian was exactly this Earth Mirror chapter, which is the foundation of Lu Xian's Tao. Lu Shi said slowly, the Zhen hexagram is similar to the Qian hexagram, both the main hexagram and the guest hexagram are the same. Zhen and mountain are not like two rivers that can merge into one. The existing two mountains are destined not to become one mountain, but the two mountains host and guest can influence each other and will definitely intersect. Assuming that the Lu family chooses Zhengua, Qin Pingan chooses Luopa Mountain first, and Lu Xian chooses Tiandu Peak next, it is a foregone conclusion when the two mountain masters will meet. How to negotiate and how to behave more appropriately has become the key to the academic level, the depth of the city, and the success or failure of both parties. So it was Cui Han's intention to allow you to land on Aquarius continent and enter the world of Old Lizhu Cave. As for talking to you about Lu's bet on Aquarius continent, he deliberately teased you. Lu Qi put his hands on his sleeves, leaned against the back of the chair and said with a smile, if you don't touch his back, if you don't see his person when you walk in the court, there is no blame. Hearing some clues, Wei Bo asked, Mr. Lu, according to the hexagram explanation, why didn't the Lu family just replace Tiandu Peak in the east of Lulu Mountain with Huimeng Mountain in the north? Wouldn't it be more in line with the concept of Zhen Qibei explain? Lu Xian's face was bitter and he shook his head slightly and said, the foundation of Huimeng Mountain is too thin, the Tao Qi is shallow and the top of the mountain is a bit low. I am not suitable to stay there. Originally, with Lu Wei's level of cultivation, it was suitable to open a dojo in Huimeng Mountain, but the Lizhu Cave sky shattered and fell to the ground, and Lu Wei, whose Taoist heart was already damaged, was determined not to stay for a moment longer. In addition, Queen Nan Hairpin, whose real name is Lu Jiang, is indeed an extremely critical chess piece, so the family asked Lu Wei to go to Dali capital to protect her. When Song He ascended the throne and proclaimed himself emperor, Nan Hairpin became a key piece. To the Empress Dowager, Song Mu was vassalized in Luojing, the capital of the imperial court. Even if Lu Wei made up for his mistakes, he only needed to meet Qin Pingan one more time to return to the family. As Lu Shi said before, when it comes to the life of the Tao and the rise and fall of the family, how dare God Lu dare to take responsibility for it casually? However, choosing a location in Tiandu Peak is not without its benefits. On the contrary, it has the wonderful advantage of another village with hidden flowers and bright flowers. What Lu Xian seeks is that his actions are appropriate, his actions and stillness are appropriate and his path is bright. I have never touched the ancestral home in Nipin Lane. I have obtained the boxing book, practiced martial arts with heart and practiced boxing to save my life. This is not the so-called prolonging life with illness. I am not greedy for money and I like to be the boy who is good at making money. I don't want to talk about others behind their backs. There are so many different things that are right and wrong and they all fit together perfectly and they are all appropriate. Speaking of this, Lu Xixiao asked, is this considered destiny? Xing Juzhong said calmly, as we sit here, do we count ourselves as destined? Even if our destiny is determined by heaven, we still seek our own blessings. Lu Xian said, the 64 lines turn to the hexagrams 5 and 6, and the lower gen is separated from the upper hexagram. They form a comprehensive hexagram. Traveling far away is like a fire burning in the mountains, spreading forward. Therefore, traveling in a hurry and rushing on the road can ensure the safety of the home and marriage. It's pretty average. Shujian Lake, with its 93 lines, is like a human body with blocked qi and blood. So he is asking for trouble and is not unjust to Master Qin. Wei Bo suddenly asked, is Tongyi's his choice to dig Dadu a kind of interpretation of Jiu Sanyao by Qin Pingon? Lu Shi nodded and said, absolutely. Wei Bo continued to ask, generally speaking, both the yamen and the gable can be used as gen, so? The Great Wall of Sword Qi has been a battleground between the two worlds' military strategists for thousands of years. There are sword cultivators led by Qin Qingdu in front of it, and the wild demon clan has stopped here. As the last hidden official, Lu Feng thought to himself and said, 65 Yao. As a foreign swordsman, he entered the yamen of the Yingguan line of swordsmen and stayed in the summer palace. The Great Wall of Sword Qi is of course extremely long, so he can be transferred to the Sungua, and he can be transferred to the 5 hexagram 13. The wind and the mountain are gradually coming. When the Great Wall of Sword Qi is broken into 2 parts, guard the city head alone, then retreat to the hexagram gen, go up to the 9th, the auspiciousness of Dun Gen will end with a thick one. Lu Shen said abruptly, Wei Shenjun, don't forget, in addition to the walls and yamen, there are also academies and school podiums. Wei Bo frowned slightly. Lu Shen sneered and said, Wei Shenjun doesn't really think that Master Qin is pretending to be a Taoist priest in the capital of Yushuan Kingdom, setting up a stall to tell fortunes for passers-by. Is it a joke? Even if he and Zhou Zi are mortal enemies, Lu Shen as a bystander has to say something fair for Zhou Zi. If not Qin Pingon, who else should he target? Zhou Zi has great worries in his heart. If the great monk has his thoughts together, heaven and earth will respond in kind. So the Tao is selfless, and all the goodwill that Qin Pingon has given to the world will one day be returned to heaven and earth. Lu Shen also wanted to use some method to imitate the embroidered tiger that could turn the sky. Lu Shen couldn't help but ask, are these all Ziohis plans? Were they all calculated by him long ago? It is only said that the Dali Imperial Court and Lulu Mountain belong to Yinyao versus Yinyao. Although they are in opposition, it is just due to their location, but there is no direct conflict because Cui Chan serves as the mediator. When Cui Yi left, Qin Pingon, Lu Wei and Nan Hao met again in the Imperial Palace of Lijing City, and they became Yang Yao to Yang Yao. Qin Pingon, whose birthday was May 5th, was in the 9 5-year plan. In the palace where the two sides were sitting, the two sides did not completely fall out. It would be an easy thing to chop off Lu Jiang's head. Lu Wei shook his head and said, playing chess is not about playing scores and life is not like playing chess. Planning and planning are not as good as the wisdom and courage at that time, and it also depends on luck. Cui Chan made many miscalculations, but they were soon eliminated by him. Corrected. For Cui Chang, if the preacher and protector on the mountain just handed down a few mantras, gave a few secret books of exercises, and gave a few magic weapons, then it would be too easy to go to the mountain to seek immortality. Pursue nothing wrong? There is a lake of slips and slips, no matter how hard you try to fix it, it is still a mistake. Everything is wrong. There was also the scene with the Fire Dragon Master in the Dragon Palace cave. He asked again and again until he came up with an answer that I had been wrestling with for a long time. Can you be at peace if you know right and wrong? Year after year, how does it feel to guard the Great Wall of Sword Qi alone, unable to see what tomorrow will bring? Zheng Juzhong said from his heart. When I was in the wilderness, I did some deductions on the Earth Mirror chapter. I can only gain some experience. It is more than enough to deal with the ordinary ascension realm. With this method, it does not consume energy and does not damage the power. I only need 100 years of effort to kill someone invisible, but it is foolish to target a person in the 14th realm in a short time, especially if the other person is a person who has been familiar with the world for a long time, so he needs to be hidden by you. This private piece of earth mirror. After all, Zhou Xian is Zhou Xian, and Clay Bodhisattva still has a third of his anger. It's obviously a calamity. Why bother talking about borrowing books? When it comes to one's own Taoist roots, Zheng Zheshong's so-called borrowing of books is no different from checking the Taoist mind. With Zheng's mind, I believe that as long as he reads the book he will be more like the real Zhou Xian than himself. Zheng Zhuzhong smiled and said, "At least it sounds better, doesn't it?" Zhou Xian was speechless, his thoughts changing rapidly. Zheng Zhuzhong said, "It's not a business, how can I get any reward? Just to show you, you want me to swear an oath that I will not hinder your union in the future so that you can feel better? I'm too lazy to do that. As for asking me to, I promise that I will take care of the Zhong to Lu family once or twice in the future and do the work of rescuing people in need, so there is no need to talk about it." Zhou Xian stretched out his finger and pointed at the sky. Mr. Zheng is still in the 14th realm after all. Can he really do whatever he wants now? Zheng Zhuzhong said, "Then I really have to kill people to borrow books. Borrowing books to kill someone is killing others. If you kill people to borrow books you will be killed, God Lu." Zhou Xian shook his head, his eyes stern. "I bet you don't dare. Silently recite the true name of the sage in your heart." After offending Zheng Zhuzhong, hiding in the central Tujia family will not help until he successfully merges with Taoism. Then he can hide in the merit forest of the Confucian temple. At worst, he will become Lu Cha's companion and devote himself to cultivating Taoism for hundreds of thousands of years. Lu Yan looked pitifully and reminded, "God Lu is the real name of the Li Xing Zheng Zhuzhong?" Zhou Xian was in a trance, his face twisted, Dao Qi rippled, he shook his head, his Dao heart was shocked, he almost broke the power and started to curse Zheng Zhuzhong. It turns out that the home mind has been occupied by doves, like a mansion being robbed by giant bandits. The pure and unsullied Dharma image in the mind has changed into the appearance of Zheng Zhuzhong at some point, and Li Xing is linked to Zheng Zhuzhong. As for the real name of Li Xing, what is it? Zhou Xian, the majestic five-color mind of Dharma, is like a mural that is gradually painted into black and white. Zhou Xian struggled to maintain a little bit of his true spirit. He was so anxious that he looked at the heaven and the earth, showing the force of a prairie fire. The palaces, vegetation, people and words all burned up. What was turned into ashes were all Zhou Xian's Taoism. Zheng Zhuzhong said to himself, "Everyone says that I am a demon and I never deny it. Do you, God Lu, think that I am a gentleman?" Zhou Xian used more than 10 kinds of secret magic and magical powers, but all of them were destroyed by himself, one by one with the movement of his hands and feet, and he was easily resolved. That Zheng Zhuzhong still sprinkled salt on Zhou Xian's heart, and the eyes of the Dharma Prime Minister shone brightly. "It's really helpful to open the book. In a few years I will definitely be able to successfully join the Tao." Zhou Xian didn't even have the slightest intention to beg for mercy. He was about to sacrifice his life and use an ancient magical power at the bottom of the box to drag Zheng Zhuzhong into the water. He saw a sacrificial altar appear in a heart like heaven and earth. In the ancient high altar, the true spirit of Zhou Xian turned into a young man dressed as a Xinga Taoist priest with paint on his face. He gradually climbed higher and higher. Zhou Xian used his own way to treat his own body. The young man transformed into Zheng Zhuzhong with a ferocious look on his face. He began to curse the gods of heaven and earth loudly in ancient words, using the most vicious content. Every time he climbed a step, Zhou Xian's eyebrows began to turn into wisps of ashes, scattered in all directions, but he felt extremely happy in his heart. Zhou Xian saw with his own eyes that the family thief Zheng Zhuzhong was harmed by Qiyu and provoked the wrath of the high-ranking gods in ancient times. The sky suddenly collapsed, a sword light appeared and fire rain fell. The heaven and earth were shattered and the great road was cut off. At this point, Zheng Zhuzhong will be followed by the heavens disgust, like a shadow, and he will go to your 15th realm. In the end, the young man was stunned and silent for a long time. He didn't know what to think. He raised an arm that was turning into dust as if to wipe off the paint on his face. Ever since he was sensible, he didn't like to be a Taoist priest who attracted much attention. He was extremely tired of the red tape of offering sacrifices to heaven and earth. In the next life. There will be no next life. Zhou Xian stood there with a calm expression, raised his palm, gently waved the dust and said with a smile that Xing Juzhong is a real devil. Call Zhou Xia bitch. At this moment a harsh voice came from behind. As you expected, Lu Xun is indeed willing to die. The second, more hateful voice sounded, so I have a high opinion of Lu Xun. In an instant the heaven, earth and carefulness were all returned to their original owners. Lu Xun sat there blankly. Is it really that there is a world of difference between one realm and the other? Lu Xi smiled and said, it is not easy for Mr. Xing to achieve this step. It is quite laborious. The distraught head of the Lu family soon regained his composure. Xing Juzhong looked at Lu Xi and suggested, would you like to go up the mountain and take a stroll? Lu Xian seemed to be hesitant, but Qin Lingjun was so hospitable that he hurriedly said, I'm already here. If it's just these few steps, yes or no? Lu Xi thought for a moment, nodded and said with a smile, okay. Once he stood up and left the table and stepped across the mountain gate archway. This was the first time in 10,000 years that Lu Xi had truly set foot in Zhongzitu Immortal Mansion. Before walking past the archway, Xing Juzhong asked, have you thought about it? Lu Xun said sadly, is there any choice? Xing Juzhong said, yes, I will die once. Lu Xun was about to lose his Taoist heart again and started to curse Xing Juzhong. Xing Juzhong said, if you hadn't found that family elder in private and wanted to do the fortune-telling for him, I would have shown up early today and went to Tiandu Peak to borrow books from you. Back then I discussed with Cui Han regarding Hedao. There are several alternative possibilities such as refining the moon into a dressing mirror and collecting all the shadows in the world. Otherwise, do you think Baidi City Lili Pavilion refines and sells a large number of dressing mirrors just to make some money? He felt that these paths were still not good enough. After all, they were a little bit heretical. After reaching the 14th realm, they were easily useless and turned into constraints. He suggested that one of the paths was to combine the most promising paths with the Lu family in China. The god of the land was given to Jiu to occupy the magpie's nest, which is what you mentioned as the Jiedao. I felt that this move was not a sure thing at the time, but Cui Han said that he could let you leave the family and the Middle-earth divine continent on your own initiative. Lu Xun heard that his scalp was in trouble and he gritted his teeth and said, if you don't consider whether this is an overstep, will the Chinese Temple of Civilization pursue it? Lu Xun suddenly said, yes, you are indeed a mirror seller and you are the founder of the Zhou Xian lineage. Note 1. Chapter 673 Needlework. Mirror sellers who are considered evil have appeared in ancient times, but the equally hidden lineage of Zhou Xian began to appear in the world about 3,000 years ago. Xing Juzhong said, what a sure enough. Lu Xun sighed, it is indeed the devil's way. On the road, a woman walked down the mountain on piles. Sun Yuanji hesitated for a moment, then stopped and stood aside without saying hello to them. When they continued to climb higher, Sun Yuanji continued to practice boxing. During this period, Xing Juzhong glanced at her. Just now, Sun Yuanji also glanced at the very eye-catching middle-aged man in a snow-white robe. She was a little uneasy and shook her head. He always felt weird. She suppressed some ripples in her mind, but she couldn't help but turn her head and look. That back view. Higher up, Zhang Lu Changming appeared on the Shinto, carrying a white-haired boy with a drooped head, walking down the stairs towards the mountain gate and walking towards Xing Juzhong and his party. Changming reminded him softly in his heart, Hong Ho, follow quickly and don't neglect those two distinguished guests. The white-haired boy complained, didn't I already report to Xiao Mili to take leave? Anyway, it is a great courtesy to have the master of the house to entertain the guests in person. It is not necessary for the music editor to show up. Chongqing hesitated for a moment and said, I'll explain it to you later. Previously, Wu Shuang, the palace maiden, visited the mountain and found her privately. In addition to her registration number, she also said that if Xing Juzhong stopped at the mountain gate, she and Kong Ho would not have to show up. If Xing Juzhong climbed the mountain, she would bring the Kong Ho to meet him. As for why they met and what to do when they met, Wu Shuangjiang didn't give any reminder, not even the slightest hint. Lu Xian and the supervisor nodded in greeting, then looked at the white-haired boy and asked seemingly casually, my friend, who is your family name? The white-haired boy was already looking sluggish, but when he saw Lu Feng and Xing Juzhong, he felt as if he was facing a powerful enemy and was very sick. As for asking them to put their names in the register, he had no courage at all. Chen Lingjun was surprised. His genealogy editor was usually very lively, But why was he so unmotivated when he saw two scholars? The white-haired boy never spoke to him, and the scholar surnamed Lu was more serious. Standing there waiting for the answer, Chen Lingjun saw the awkward atmosphere and was afraid that outsiders would misunderstand and mistake the white-haired boy for a sect disciple with eyes above his eyebrows. So he took it upon himself to answer for the genealogist. Mr. Lu, this Taoist monk from Kongho is now our genealogy monk in Lolu Mountain, and his household registration is in Huaihuang County, Chuzhou. Lu Shi smiled and said, Fellow Daoist Hongho, is this really true? Is it our Haoran family? Jing Juzhong looked amused. The white-haired boy raised his head. She looked at that awe-inspiring existence, whose power was even greater than that of the Chunyang Taoist priest before. She didn't understand why he was holding on to such a trivial matter. 55. However, in a sense, the predecessor of Wu Shuangjiang in the Suichu Palace was indeed a genuine monk Haoran, and he was also a worshipper in the martial temple. She just married a chicken, a dog, and said listlessly, Seriously, so Jingqing is telling the truth. Chen Lingjun secretly winked at the white-haired boy. Not long ago you were an anonymous disciple of the outer sect. Thanks to the meeting at the Jisa Peak Ancestral Hall, you have just become an inner disciple named in the genealogy. You have been transferred and promoted. Otherwise, how can I explain it to outsiders? Aha, the only handyman disciple in Luopa Mountain? Of course, the inner disciples of Lolu Mountain are still unique. Changming smiled and said, You can find the genealogy of the ancestral hall in Luopa Mountain and the household records of the county government. Weibo felt relieved and couldn't help but beam with joy. He reached out and touched Qin Lingjun's head. Good guy, he finally did something serious and meritorious. Qin Lingjun immediately became unhappy and shook his head, no matter how big or small. Lu Feng stared at the demon incarnation, smiled and said, Okay, I understand. Weibo felt really happy and patted the kid in green on the head. Qin Lingjun suddenly glared. My nephew and his friends are here. Could you please give me some noodles, Brother Wei? It's just that Qin Lingjun couldn't help but murmur in his heart. Could this Mr. Lu have worked as an errand in the Hufang Yamen of a county in a certain country? Jing Juzhong explained with a smile from his heart. Students who are scholars like to inquire deeply. Qin Lingjun hummed and began to show off to his nephew. It's good to be true. If you like being true, it's good. It's easy to get ahead. Lu Shen knew the importance of this question and answer. He glanced at the boy in green and was not sure for a moment. Is this guy really stupid? The white-haired boy followed his heart and admitted to his face that he was a member of the Haoran family. Then when Lu Shi nodded again, he acknowledged the matter. So if you want to deny that fellow Daoist Kong Ho belongs to Haoran, there are only two possibilities. Yudo is in charge of Bai Yujing, or Run Yefeng is so hardworking that he does not hesitate to cross the world in person to find Haoran and Lu Shi and confront him face to face. Saying that the white-haired boy is a Qingming monk, and they may not be able to succeed, at most it will become a confusing lawsuit. To put it simply in one sentence, from now on, Bai Yujing will no longer be able to use the nature of the palace made to challenge Luo Luoshan and make more fuss. Lu Feng knew Jing Zhuzhong's intentions, so it didn't matter. The general situation of the world had already been revealed. How could he stay out of it? Just like the predecessor of the woman practicing boxing, the monks can still use various methods to avoid disasters, but Lu Shi and their physical bodies are the largest gen hexagram in the world. Lu Shen has been staring at the Lolu mountain that seems to be very close at Tindu Peak these years. Of course, he is no stranger to Tsinyuanji. A person who has attained the Tao lives in a secluded mountain. When he enters Samadhi, his mind is connected to the heaven and earth. He can see fireflies flickering like the sun and moon at night, and hear mosquitoes flapping their wings like thunder. The old temple master followed Dao Zhu to visit a small town last time. After they separated, they went hiking alone. During this period, they met Zhu Lian and Tsinyuanji, who was walking on the mountain road and practicing boxing. At that time, the old temple master also took the initiative to ask the female martial artist. Zhu Lian said that Tsinyuanji was his unnamed disciple. The old temple master was a wise man, and he could see at a glance that Tsinyuanji's method of moving flowers and marrying trees was his. However, at the time he thought it was Lu Chen's consistent behavior. The viewer was too lazy to study the household affairs of other families in Shantao, so he did not deduce any further context. Note 2, Chapter 851, Mud Bottle Alley. Going back and forth in the mountains, the beautiful figures are like a tapestry. Lu Shen asked in his heart. Is she the reincarnation of that part? Jing Juzhong neither admitted nor denied it. Back then, the great Ascension Realm monster in the Middle-earth Divine Continent was killed by Ye's sword. It was a kind of soldier who had no choice but to take the initiative to escape from the calamity. Bai Yi and that fairy sword are naturally the best way to deal with the whole world. When Jing Juzhong found it, the only request it made was that Bai Yi must hand over the sword. This is not because it deliberately opens its mouth and is whimsical. Rather, its true form and state determine that it has to make this request. Otherwise, a military solution will lose the meaning of escape. Jing Juzhong said there was no problem, just let it wait. It actually doesn't think Jing Juzhong can promote this matter. Even if you are Jing Juzhong, you are still in the Ascension Realm. How can you please the most proud person in the world who even ignores the sages of the Confucian Temple? But Xin Yuanji is just a ferry or inn. Of course you have to pay to stay in an inn, which is why Xin Yuanji has many opportunities besides practicing boxing. The guests had all climbed the mountain and cleared the table together. Xianwei took out a Daoist book from his sleeve, read it for a moment, raised his head and asked in confusion, "What about millet grains?" I saw the little girl in black standing under the archway facing the mountain shrine, standing upright holding a gold pole in one hand and a green bamboo stick in the other, each poking at the ground. She just watched them gradually climb up and did not look back for a long time. Xiaomili said softly, watching them climb the mountain. Until Mr. Zheng and the others met with the director Changming and the music compiler, they chatted and turned into a mountain trail together. They must have gone to the elm forest to enjoy the scenery. Xiaomili then sat back on the bamboo chair, placed the pole and bamboo stick across his knees, and bored rolled the hiking stick with the palms of his hands and explained, "Since there is not much money in the pocket, etiquette depends on your heart. The meaning in my heart is where others can't see it." Xianwei remembered something. The tall old Taoist priest from before asked Xiaomili seriously, "How many days does it take?" Just because Xiaomili said he hadn't been here for a long time. But no normal person would be able to ask such a question. Fortunately, Xiaomili responded and reported the exact number. Xianwei held the title of Taoist priest and had been wandering around the world for many years. He was forced to make a living and was a good observer of people's emotions. It was obvious that the mountain owner was very nervous at that time. Xiaomili moved the bamboo chair towards Xianwei and lowered his voice and said, "I heard from Jingqing that you have a very strange sign tube. The sign is very rare and unique. Can you tell me?" Xianwei said with a shy face, "I have been eating dust for a long time. If you are interested, just play with it yourself. There is nothing rare, it is just that there are a total of 107 bamboo sticks in the bamboo stick, of which 72 bamboo sticks correspond to 2. There are also the 72 solar terms, the sun, the moon, the 8 trigrams, the 10 heavenly stems and the 12 earthly branches. It's really 107 signatures." Xiaomili counted while listening. She soon frowned and asked curiously, "Why don't you round up the whole number 108 lots?" The Xianwei laughed and said, "Maybe the sign grew its own legs and escaped secretly?" Xiaomili thought for a while, her brows stretched and she burst into laughter. Riddles were her specialty. It's easy to guess. "I know the answer." Xing Dafeng, who had never shown his face, just stood at the door of the house and said, "Can you guess this? I've been thinking hard for a long time." Xiaomili grinned and said, "Suppose Taoist Master Xianwei sets up a fortune-telling stall, and whoever sits down to draw lots will get the fortune." Xing Dafeng was doubtful and turned to look at Xianwei. Xianwei nodded and said, "It is indeed the right answer." Xing Dafeng rubbed his chin, "It's chewy." Xianwei and Xiaomili raised their hands in tacit agreement and gave them a high five. Xing Dafeng asked, "Is there any business for such a unique lottery solution? Are there many repeat customers?" This question was a bit inappropriate. Xianwei said angrily, "Brother Dafeng, what do you think?" Xing Dafeng saw Xin Yuanji, smiled and waved, "Miss Xin, you are in the mountains again today." Xin Yuanji was confused after hearing this, so he ignored his search for words and continued walking until he reached the foot of the mountain and climbed the mountain again. Xing Dafeng said to himself, "Don't wait for that little brat like Li Huai. Rely on your own efforts and have enough food and clothing." He strode toward the town. He just stopped suddenly and turned to look at the young Taoist priest. Seeing that he did not go to Fiao Lu, Xianwei asked curiously, "Brother Dafeng wants to go to the county seat?" Xing Dafeng nodded and said, "Go to Yang's pharmacy and bring back some items." Although Xianwei was confused, he didn't ask any more questions. Xing Dafeng said, "Don't be stunned. You should follow and lend a hand. I can't move it alone." Xianwei timidly said, "Pin Dao is just cheating money at most, not a thief." Xing Dafeng smiled and said, "Don't talk nonsense." Xianwei had no choice but to follow and asked Xiao Mili to help guard the door. Xiaomi was secretly happy. "Oh haha, I guessed it all." Xing Dafeng took Xianwei on foot out of the western mountains, chatting along the way. In the early years, the people in the small town were accustomed to working at sunrise and resting at sunset. As if they were dreaming during the day, they saw a group of unheard-of gods and immortals. They soared in the clouds, rode in the mist, and controlled the wind and blue sky. Back then, people always liked to gather together and talk quietly, as if they also ate but did not poop. Those foreign gods quickly learned the small town dialect, and they spent money to buy old items from each house. Without blinking an eye, they took out stacks of banknotes just like papyrus. Buyers and sellers look at each other in the eyes. Everyone feels that the other party is taken advantage of, and everyone is afraid that the other party will regret it and refuse to admit it. To this day in the town, there are still nearly 100 monks who spent a lot of money to buy the house. Some of them are single or together with one or two Taoist friends, and they are practicing hard in Huaihuang County. These monks were registered and recorded by the Ministry of Rights, and the Ministry of Punishment were responsible for supervision. The Kiln Supervision Office in the small town was responsible for the specific docking matters. But in fact, the monks, regardless of the size of the sect or the level of their realm, tried not to follow the previous ones. The two inspectors negotiated, and of course they were not willing to be approached by officials from the inspection department. The local officials of the Dali court did not take Taoist monks too seriously. In the hands of Cui Chan, a rule was established for both the mountain and the people. As long as there was a conflict between monks and lay people, the former would be suspected of being guilty and the latter would be innocent. The entire Aquarius continent is looking forward to the next national preceptor of the Great Li dynasty. Although there are speculations and conjectures on the mountain and down the mountain, as long as the edict of the Great Li dynasty is not promulgated for a day, there will be a day of suspense. Passing by the Pearl Mountain, Xing Dafeng said seriously, "Priest Xianwei, would you like to pay your respects to that mountain?" Xianwei asked, "What's the point?" Xing Dafeng said, "Since you have to worship the mountain when you enter the mountain, you should also." Xianwei tentatively said, "Every place has its own custom of worshipping the top of the mountain. You worship first so I can learn from it." Xing Dafeng patted Xianwei on the shoulder. "It's not easy to lie to him. When I walked into the town, it was still a lot deserted compared to back then. The dog feces and chicken manure that used to be everywhere on the ground were less common." The Xianwei missed the old immortal Jiaxing. The old Taoist priest was highly respected in the town. Familiar with the family and the road, he took Xiaoma through the streets and alleys to the Yang family pharmacy. There was once a lean and dark boy wearing straw sandals. When he went on a long trip for the first time, he walked to the door of Swaycliffe Academy. Even though he bought new clothes and boots, he still shrank. He has a pair of bright eyes and his skin becomes darker. After that, it became commonplace to travel far away from home and become a business owner again and again. Every time I return home, there are harvests, big and small, just like swallows picking up mud and ants moving, replenishing the household income bit by bit. Accompanying Li Baoping, Li Huai and the others to Swaycliffe Academy, they brought back Chen Lingjun and Wan Shu on their way back home. During the process, they also captured a golden crucian carp. Going from the Jianqi Great Wall to Tongyi's Hao, I accidentally entered the Lotus Flower Blessed Land, and there were Pei Qian and 4 people in the picture scroll beside me, as well as a little lotus figure with a broken arm. Later, while traveling to Luzhou Beiju, there stood a little girl in black who liked to spend money to crack chestnuts in a basket on her back. Going to the Great Wall of Sword Qi again, Miyuha chose Luopa Mountain for his long life. When Qin Pingon finally returned to Haoran, he brought back 8 sword cultivators including Bai Xian in one go. The sword cuts through the barbaric wilderness, the bright moon migrates, and a loyal dead soldier named Xiaomo emerges. In the capital city of Dali, I met the Taoist priest Xianwei who pretended to be a ghost. I went to the capital of Yushuan Kingdom and found Ning Ji, who even Lu Chen thought was a hot potato. Wutong Mountain recognized Deng Jianping as his apprentice. Not to mention Yu Shiwu and Xiao Xing, who were thrown away by Qin Pingon to work long-term jobs in Xinxiang Tiandi. In Chiduan Mountain, in a sitting on the ground and sharing the spoils, initiated by a Liang and co-acted by Wei Tutu, Qin Pingon made the last choice and chose the pale golden lotus seed. Qin Pingon created a small pond behind the bamboo building. They are all waiting patiently for the germination and flowering of the seed in the lotus pond. When Tang Yezhou said goodbye that year, his friend Lu Tai lied to Qin Pingon, saying that he had picked up a bag of elm seeds at Shaoyan Street in Fujizong. Lu Tai gave it to Qin Pingon and asked him to return to his hometown and plant it in a sunny place on the mountain. Qin Pingon was ignorant, but Wei Bo was an expert. He could see at a glance that it was the seed of the ancestral elm tree in the divine continent of Middle-earth. No matter what, many years later in the Luoluo Mountain, there was a forest of elm trees, lush and green. From Wuyi in Xiang Prefecture, Luopa Mountain got a fairy plum core. After planting it, it was carefully cultivated by Nuan Shu. It was really miraculous. Just like the rumors, it grew into a solar tree that looked like a 1,000-year-old tree in 1 year. Plum. Every 24th solar term there will be spiritual energy overflowing. No matter how polite Lu Chongrun and the others were over at Lulu Mountain's homebrewed bayberry wine, they would take the initiative to ask for it. Forefathers planted trees for future generations to enjoy the shade. The elm forest and the plum tree are located on the mountainside between the bamboo building and the mountain gate, two adjacent feng shui treasures. Zhang Lu Changming often walked alone to Yulin, while Taoist Xianwei often went to enjoy the coolness under the plum trees and admire the moon. He never forgot to bring a bamboo chair with him. Jing Dafeng would occasionally go out at night together and chat about their reading experiences. When they were hungry, they encouraged each other and joined hands to knock on the old cook's door, shouting for a midnight snack. Zhou Xian always comes to the door on time when they are about to take off their chopsticks, eats everything without saying a word, wipes it clean and leaves with a toothpick in her mouth. He has the style of an assassin. Not to mention outsiders, even Jing Dafeng couldn't believe that Qin Pingon really allowed Luo Luoshan to establish a sect. Arriving at the door of Yang's medicine shop, Jing Dafeng asked, "Who do you think the mountain master is?" Xianwei was stunned for a moment. Careful, generous, good person, wise, dedicated, responsible, and handsome in appearance. Jing Dafeng clicked his tongue. The atmosphere of Luo Luo Mountain should be more famous than the night banquet. Jing Dafeng asked, "During your walk, have you noticed the blank spaces above the house door?" The Xianwei nodded and said, "It was originally where the mirror was mounted. It was removed back then and I heard that it was sold to outsiders at a high price." Jing Dafeng was silent. It seems that the first person to describe Qin Pingon as a mirror was the conversation between Qi Jingchun and Cui Dongshan in the old house in Erlang Lane. When Cui Chan formally met Qin Pingon for the first time in Luoshan Mountain, he was reminded to look back at the shadow behind him. The last time the patriarch of the three religions came to the town in person, outside the mud bottle alley, Dao Patriarch told Qin Pingon that people should never be frightened by their own shadows. I think back to those days when I first met Cui Dongshan. The carefree young man in white said a lot of words that Qin Pingon mistakenly thought were nonsense at the time. For example, the black and white words on the paper had profound meanings and every word was a shadow. The words are endless but the meaning is endless. There are countless young men in the world who regard deep meaning as random. Life is like a test paper with constant fill-in-the-blank questions. Arranging the principles we have chosen and the people and things we have chosen are the answers we give. Ma Kushuan once told the nominal closed disciple, the most pleasing hatchet boy, that a person rarely cares about his own shadow. The root of the great path of transforming the demon outside is, to a certain extent, the first Taoist priest in the world or some kind of shadow of all those who practice Taoism. Qin Pingon once said to Yuan Huajing, who met by chance in the Luzong Temple dojo, "It doesn't matter, there is no shadow under the sun." They traveled together in Fuyao Island. Since the girl in the mink hat mentioned the Yinyang fish for the first time, Qin Pingon also asked Xiego, "Have you ever seen the shadow of a shadow?" Entering the shop there was only one clerk, Shi Shan. When he saw that it was his uncle Jing Dafeng, he ignored the young Taoist priest. When they got to the backyard, Jing Dafeng went to the woodshed and asked Xianwei to sit wherever he wanted. When Xianwei saw a bench, he moved to sit on it and waited for brother Dafeng. The Taoist priest put his hands on his sleeves and the old was there. He looked across the patio in the courtyard and towards the main room with the door closed. "It's a bit sad that it's not easy for my mountain owner to get to where he is today. In Lulu Mountain, those who arrived earlier than him seemed to be the only ones who didn't like to talk about the mountain master's childhood. But Xianwei still has some hearing and understanding. In fact, just as he walked towards the drugstore, Xianwei had a hard time imagining how a child must have felt when he went to the drugstore again and again to grab medicine. The Immortal captain held his sleeves up and looked up at the sky. The 24 solar terms in the human world are like the formation of troops on the battlefield. When you are young and strong, you must dare to strive for fame and career. The heat of wealth is like a mild summer to a severe summer. You must also consider not to spend your later life with light snow or heavy snow. Therefore, we must know that the best principle is to live a small life and avoid being perfect. This requires a person to think about the summer solstice when the days are longest to the winter solstice when the nights are long. We should also think about the approaching beginning of spring in the coming year during those difficult and unbearable cold seasons. When you conduct yourself in the world, you should have a clear conscience. In good times, the heat will be like frost, and in times of adversity, the cold dew will be like the vernal equinox. There is an order to things. A young man should first make up his mind and be willing to make the first-class ambitions. The beginning of spring, the beginning of summer, the beginning of autumn, and the beginning of winter. Spring also begins summer, autumn begins, and winter also begins to set ambitions. The Xianwei felt something and murmured something sincerely. Over at the woodshed, Xing Dafeng asked with a smile, "Xianwei, what are you thinking about while looking at the wind?" Xianwei's heart tightened, looking for the wind. What, not moving? Really a thief? Xing Dafeng changed the subject, poked his head out from the woodshed and raised his chin. This bench has been around for some years and many important people have sat on it. Xianwei quickly stood up and wiped the chair with his sleeves while complaining, "I didn't tell you earlier." Xing Dafeng smiled and said, "I haven't even sat on it." Xianwei glanced at the bench. It must be worth a lot of money. Chongqing, who was one of the ancestors of gold and copper coins in the world, chose Luopa Mountain as the foothold of Howren world. At that time, the war in Old Longqing was tense, and Chongqing wanted to do her little bit to see if the shop needed gold and copper coins, so she, who had some connections with Shinto, took the initiative to visit the old man at Yang's pharmacy and paid a respectful visit. Although Old Man Yang had a kind attitude and gave a kind-hearted reply, Chongqing still did not sit down on the bench. The saints who have been in charge of the 3 religions and 1 family in the past generations can do this, but they never dare to live long. To a certain extent, they are all officials of the previous dynasty. Xianxia's meeting with one of the 12 high-ranking officials holding the Ascension platform is similar to the meeting of a subordinate official in the imperial court with the 3 nobles and 9 ministers. Before Old Man Yang left the shop, he had a rare smile and said, "What a great opening chapter." Note 3, Chapter 716, Jia Xing disappoints. It doesn't matter whether it's a hexagram or a sign. The young Taoist priest's soliloquy is the answer. The real solution to the opening